Miss Minerva Oaks. She's the flower of the flower coach.
Is it possible to put your sock on backwards? I think I did. Oh, there, I corrected it. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome. It is once again time for Aaron Live. We are still in 2024, but this will be the last show of 2024. And I got to tell you, I almost sabotaged my own show. I was sitting here with 5 minutes to go before I went live. And I noticed there was nothing in the chat. And I was like, what the heck? Usually there's a couple people there, like with early greetings or whatever. And so I went back and looked at what I'd done, and I'd forgot to put it on X and YouTube. It was only on Facebook, which of course you get like 3 people on Facebook every time I do a show. So, so I was scrambling, going, oh my gosh, how could I have done that? And, scrambling and got it fixed, and here we are. So the crowd is slowly rolling in. It's a late arriving crowd, but it's my own fault. But hopefully I didn't completely sabotage my own show. But here we are. 1, 2, 3 days till the new year, till 2025. I think we always in life, we have those moments where you say, I'm going to remember this moment in time. And I remember, I have a couple of those. Like I remember when I was like 5 years old and I was dreaming about what it would be like to be 16 and be able to drive a car, and what would I look like when I was 16 and all this kind of stuff. And I'll never forget that. And when I turned 16, I remembered that moment. And another moment I had was when I used to work at Montgomery Ward, as we like to call it, monkey wards, but they would fire you if you called it that while you were working there. In fact, that was the first thing they told us when we got a job. Don't call it monkey wards. So anyway, I worked at Montgomery Ward in the camera department, and I met one of my friends after we closed down, and we met in the parking lot, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do that night. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? We were 19. And we got out of this conversation about, man, what's it going to be like in the year 2000? This was 1984, 83. So that'd have been 1983. And we were sitting there thinking, man, I'm going to be 36 years old in the year 2000. Wow, man, we couldn't even fathom it. Could not even fathom it. And here we are. It's 2025. And I'm looking 61 years old, right around the corner. And this brings up another point I'd like to make. My wife was watching something on YouTube, right? And she goes, she was looking at the menu because we had it on our TV, right? We've got all your streaming services and you've got your choices, and YouTube is one of them. So she clicked on YouTube and it showed like the different things that you could watch on YouTube that, related to what she had been watching. And she goes, people can literally put anything on YouTube and they'll get an audience. And I said, yeah, it's true. And she goes, well, why can't you get an audience? And I, of course, replied, because I'm old. That's why. And because I'm old and I talk about comic books, and that's a pretty limited audience. But yeah, you guys laugh at me, but someday you'll be old too. But anyway, so there you go. That's how we're going to start off the show. Now I'm looking at my little nomiker there. It says Baby New Year Aaron. I'm thinking, shouldn't I be like Father Time Aaron? Maybe, I don't know. No, I'm going to be fresh and new and revitalized and energized and ready to go. And that's where we are. So let's take a look and see who's here at the chat now that I have not put you to sleep, but hopefully entertained you with a little some stories of whimsy of years gone by. Halder 6480 is indeed the first one here. You get nothing for that, but we do appreciate your participation. Marcus Killigrew coming in second, purveyor of all things pop culture knowledge, joining us. Leg Kick is here because Leg Kick is almost always here. So my Washington friends, should I try and go to Washington SummerCon this year? I won't go to Seattle anymore. After the Summer of Love, I have written off the city of Seattle. I will never go there again. Famous last words. Didn't Sean Connery say he would never play James Bond again? And then he ended up in a James Bond movie called Never Say Never Again. Remember that? So I got to be careful. But I have no plans to go to Seattle anymore. The Geekies here. Cole King. Nicholas Gear. How do Aaron's opinion not reflect the opinions of the show? It's Aaron's show. And that, my friend, is the complex comedy that I bring. Let's see here. Mark Burtonshaw says, might stay up a bit later. Don't know why I got a notification. How long do these things go? He's like, who are you and why am I watching this? 2 hours. I'll be done at 5:30 Pacific time, which would be 8:30 East Coast time. There you go. That's usually how long these things go. I will have Mike Barron joining me in about 20 minutes to talk about his projects and, of course, his life and quite storied career. Let's see. There's Gary Bruce. There's Gray Wolf. There's Dale A. 2025 will be Bigfoot's year. I just know it. We shall see. Creative Phase joining us. Merilith 2005 says, hail Aaron. Hail Merilith. Thanks for joining us. Dale A. Let's see. Marcus Kilgrew says Facebook sucks. It kind of does now. But what's his face still must be making money off of it. So Stippling Vaughn saying, yes, I am indeed a boomer. I kind of think Stippling's as much of a boomer as I am, though. He may not be quite as old as me, but I know he has a gray beard, so he can't be too young. Jimmy Owens is there. Hey, Jimmy. Oh, by the way, Shelly sends her salutations and season's greetings to everybody in the chat, because I know you guys always say hey to her, and she's obviously hasn't been here in a while. But we're hoping to change that in the not too distant future. But she says hey to everybody. Real Steel, what did you get for Christmas? Oh, we'll get there. We will get there. Wizard Sleeves, hey, Aaron. Hope you had a Merry Christmas, and 2025 is going to be amazing. That's always the hope, isn't it? The New Year's resolution. No, this year, this is going to be the year. It's all been downhill for comics since 83. I don't know if 83. I got back into comics about 85, 86 when I was in college. And so I have fond memories of my comics experiences in the 80s. Violent Comics is here. Oh, I just read his thing. Talking about boomer moment. Randy Howell, all the way from Canada. Blur is here. Overlord is joining us. Dale A says, come to Lilac City Comic Con. I may attend if you're there. I don't even know what that is or where it is. Andy Dalliff is here. Michelle Bowers. Thank you for joining us, Michelle. Ocean View Refugee. I love that. Hail Mike Barron's youth. Yeah. Well, I brought Mike on so I would feel young. Daryl Wayne is here. Grandpa needs a nap. I just had I went to Dutch to get an energy drink because I was like falling asleep going, what is wrong? No, I've been staying up really late because, it's been the holidays. Family's home. My daughter's still here. And so I've been watching a lot of football. Then I watch football reruns, and then and then pretty soon it's 12:30 at night, and you're like, I gotta go to bed. And you try and get up in the morning, and you're like, so. Anyway, there's Ken Jackban. Greetings and salutations from Vallejo, California. I remember spending when I was down in LA, living in LA and going to school down there. I remember spending a Christmas or two in LA, and we would like shut the curtains. We had a little Christmas tree and shut the curtains and open up our little presents. And I say that way because it was just like me and my girlfriend. At the time, there was like, it wasn't family because I was staying there because I didn't want to drive 1,000 miles back up to Portland. And it'd be like, oh yeah, it's snowing outside, ha. And then we'd open up the blinds and it's sunny and hey, let's go to the beach. And so the whole Christmas vibe, man, when you live in like sunny weather, like Florida or California in the wintertime, it's like, it's not the wintertime. It's never like that sort of Christmassy kind of thing. But anyway, there's Winston Go all the way from Winston. I haven't seen you in a while. It's Philippines, right? Am I wrong? I think I am wrong. Winston, you're not in the Philippines. Are you in the Philippines? I can't remember. That's how long, Winston, it's been since I've seen you. Here's Mark. Mark says, sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. I'm a reader, but don't follow your streams. I just surprised that YouTube just made you appear. Hey, that's fine, man. No offense taken. I appreciate you being here, even if it's by accident. But yeah, we talk comics. We have a comic book artist, if you didn't know. 35 years in the business. Oh, I'm feeling every year of it in the old joints. But yeah, we talk about comics and comic related stuff and Bigfoot. That's always a good topic on this show. So hang out, see if you like it. If you do, spread the word. And if you don't tell anybody. Nordic Nerd is here. Shin Batsu, Merry Christmas to Lopez. Well, Merry Christmas to you, Shin. There's Eric Boyd. Okay, Randy Siplon. Hail everybody and Happy New Year. Okay. All right, I think we covered everybody that's here, or at least willing to identify themselves. It always cracks me up when I find out that there's like other pros or people that I wouldn't expect that watch my show, but they never comment. They're just kind of lurking in the background, in the shadows, if you will. So the question is, what did I get for Christmas? See that giant Star Trek back there? That giant Enterprise that's battling Zemnu, the living Titan? See this? Now, this comes off. Check this out. Push the button here. There's the dilithium crystal right there. You probably can't see it, but it'll light up. Right? Yeah, look at the lights. Lights down here. Yeah. That's what I call fun. As you can see, Zemnu the Living Titan is currently battling the Enterprise. Now, if I take Zemnu off here, the lid on this sucker lifts off, right? And you got the little crew in there. It's kind of silly. They look like little Lego figures. But there's buttons in here. If I want to go red alert. Now, that's because the Klingons are close by, so we got to go to warp drive to get out of here. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the photon torpedo button. Now, come on, baby. Give me warp drive. Here we go. These lights will start spinning faster. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how we go to warp speed. And then we want to shut down the Enterprise. We just push this button. Just push this button. There we go. Ta-da! But that's not all. Now, some of you may know or may not know or may not even care to know. I'm a dinosaur guy, at least in a very superficial sense. I think they look cool. I'm certainly no woo. But Papo is this company, and they make awesome dinosaurs. Now, this is an iguanodon. Look at the sculpt on this. Isn't that nice? And then I got the old mosasaur. Look at that thing. Mm-hmm. It's like it's real or something. Then the old Diplodocus. There he is. Look at this guy. So this joins my already quite extensive dinosaur collection over there. Aaron, you're wearing a reddish shirt. It's true, I am. Thank you. Thank you for the $2 and pointing that out. I kind of feel like there's a connection there that I'm missing, but yeah, what do you? Oh, I get it. The Star Trek red shirt. Well, of course, there's a good chance I could die at any moment. So you guys keep your eyes peeled to the screen. You don't want to miss that one. Evil One for 5. Thank you, sir. Sending your book out tomorrow. Cool gifts, dude. I got new Lazy Boy. Oh my gosh, got a new Lazy Boy for Christmas and a tripod and food. Hope everyone in chat had a Merry Christmas too. Okay, here's the truth. I thank you for the 5, Evil One, and thank you for the comic that you got for me that's on its way. I can't wait to see it. In fact, we will do it on this show because it's so unique. But you know those Hickory Farm boxes that you see at malls, right? That have like sausage and a cheese and a box of crackers. And those are like my favorite things in the world. And so is that hyperbole? I don't think it is. And so I bought one for myself, gave it to my daughter, said, wrap this and give it to me as a present. So that way I made sure that I got at least one Hickory Farms box. I haven't broke into it yet. I'm going to on New Year's Day, start slicing up the old summer sausage, and I got bacon and cheddar cheese, and come on now, that's good stuff. You know, the Geek Easy is correct. Just because I'm wearing red doesn't mean I have to die. So we're gonna go on the side of perhaps I might survive this episode. Well, let's see. Eric Boy says the infectious dinosaur known as Diphtheria canis. There probably is one. Don't get me started on dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs. I just don't think. I hope I don't piss off any dinosaur people in the audience. But unless somebody has at least 50% of the skeletal remains in one find, I doubt the actual existence of a lot of these dinosaurs that they have created from a single bone or a single tooth or partial, of a jawbone. Once again, my son texting me during my show. This happens every week. If you watch this show every week, you'll know that my son texts me every time I'm doing the show. And I'm like, Josh, I'm doing the show. And he's like, oh yeah. Oh, anyway. So Josh is the one who got me that Star Trek Playmobil, and that was actually used because I think they're like $250, $300 brand new. And he found some guy that had the only thing that's missing from that is there's like 7 tribbles that come with it that we don't have the tribbles. But I thought that's okay. If you got a deal on it, all I really care about is the ship. And so I'm feeling good. Daniel Russell says, I look like a tribble. I don't know. Why is it so like hot, like this hot light hitting me. I don't know. Look at that. It's like a nuclear holocaust right here on my face. I've got to get some. That's what I should have asked for Christmas. I need a ring light, so I can turn off this overhead light so I don't look like that. Looks okay. I mean, other than it being my face, lighting wise, it looks okay. And that's what I need. Is I need a new setup here. And then that's what I should have asked for Christmas. But but I got a birthday coming up, so maybe that's what I'll do. Is I'll buy myself a new lighting setup, give it to my daughter, then she can give it to me for Christmas. Because I figure I got to pay for my own presents anyway. I might as well get exactly what I want, right? There's no surprise, but you need to add something. Boy, do I ever. Actually, I need to, I have one of those like Vaseline things over the light, so I look really, glamorous. Oh, Geeky, he's fired up. I need to vent on this. Guy Gardner in the Superman trailer looks like Stewart from Mad TV. It looks like he should be going around saying, "Look at what I can do." I have not seen that trailer yet. Is that bad of me? Am I to a point in my life where I just don't give a rip about anything? I'm getting there. Oh yeah, I just got Jurassic Park waffle maker for Christmas. Oh, okay. Now seriously, so you make like waffles with like, is it like got the Jurassic Park logo in the waffle, or is it just like, I assume that's what it is. That would be actually kind of cool. You'd make it, then go, I don't really want to eat that. I made waffles actually for Christmas breakfast. I did. That's the kind of guy I am. Bacon and waffles. Alrighty. So got a few more minutes for my good friend Mike Barron shows up. I'm trying to think. I got the what else did I get? Well, my wife got me a pooper scooper for the dog. I'm like, oh, thank you so much for that. And we got like candy from C's Candy, which is always good. That's pretty much it. The dinosaurs and what more could you want? I needed new underwear, but that's another story. Okay. Let's take a moment here and enjoy today's Frazetta image. So here we go. You know what's interesting about that? That is the second Savage Pellucidar painting that Frazetta did. The first one, if you recall, was the girl with the two saber tooths on either side of her, and she had this swoopy hair. And I was talking about how, her figure had a lot of motion in it, because of the way he had her posed. And that was like in the 60s, like 64, I think. Well, then they re-release it in 1974, and he does a whole new painting, which I thought was really, really interesting. Same concept. You have the warrior chick, but only one saber tooth instead of two. And I like both paintings really well. I like the first one better just because of the dual saber tooths, probably. But this is a really good one too, and a very famous one. I just thought it was really interesting that, because sometimes Frazetta will go in and repaint something, but it's the same thing as before, but just a more updated version of it. or they just use the same illustration. And I thought that first one was really, really great. But then he goes in and does a new one for the same book, or a later version of the same book. I thought that was interesting. So anyway, we are on our journey, our Frazetta journey through the Pellucidar series, which of course is the center of the earth with all the dinosaurs and cavemen hang out. And so a great series of books and or stories by Edgar Rice Burroughs. What an imagination that dude had. And we're all still ripping him off to this day. You know what else we have probably just enough time to do? Oh, there it is. StreamYard changed the title of the different categories for, different things that you might want to use during your live stream. And so I'm clicking on the wrong button going, why isn't that stuff coming up? And I'm like, because they changed the name to protect the innocent. At least that's what they did on Dragnet. Anyway, I do have a little treat. Let's have a little snack.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
So my daughter goes, let's go to Trader Joe's. And who am I to turn her down? And so I picked up Trader Joe's dark chocolate covered cherries. Now I got the dark chocolate because it's good for you. I love cherries. I love chocolate. They also had chocolate covered almonds. They had chocolate covered almonds with coconut in them. So basically like a mini Mounds bar, which as a kid I never liked, but I love them now as an adult. I've come to really appreciate coconut in my old age. Stealth X5, $2 big. Hello, he says. Thank you, Stealth, for joining us. I appreciate it very much and appreciate the super chat. Pastmaster Dan says cherries aren't cheap. No, they're not. They really aren't. Pantheon apologizing for being late, but made it here to catch the show. Well, we're just warming up. This is the warm-up section, before the show actually begins. My son is sending me eBay comic book things that are on for sale. He's like, hey, check this out. Hey, check this out. And I do. And then I'm in turmoil trying to figure out, should I spend the money to get that? Should I spend the money to get that? Because I am a comic book addict. That is for sure. Let's take a moment, if we can, to take a commercial break. And please let me tell you about my wonderfully exciting comic book campaign, or should I say graphic novel campaign, called Wraith of God, #3, Fear Hollow. So yes, you can tell by the number that this is the third in a series of graphic novels. The first two were highly acclaimed and well received, which I was very excited about, of course. And so if you've missed out on these, man, you got to get in on it. You got to get in on the action. I know all you guys got, some people got, I shouldn't say all you guys, but I'm sure some of you guys got some Christmas money and you're going, I need to spend it on this. And I couldn't agree more. Now, Wraith of God, of course, is the story of a guy who believes that God spoke to him and told him to go hunt down the monsters in the United States around 1883. So he's a master of disguise, a makeup artist, an illusionist, hand-to-hand combat guy. I mean, he's kind of like Batman of the Old West. Travels around in a wagon with his partner Esther, who is a former Salvation Army worker that he sort of tricked into joining him on this quest to fight monsters. So they have their relationship's getting better, but it started off very contentious. Those of you who read the very first graphic novel can attest to. And so this time, the two of them are going up against the Headless Horseman. And this is kind of a blast from the Wraith's past, 20 years earlier when he was just a wee lad of 13 years old, 12 or 13. And he came in contact with the Headless Horseman in a place called Cranestown in New England. And so now, 20 years later, he's going back to see if the ghosts of the past are still buried or if they've been resurrected. And indeed, there's trouble a brewing. We get more about the Wraith's origin. So a lot of good stuff going on. And it's the scariest one I've written yet. So I think you'll like it. But you have 4 cover choices. You have Wraith of God, Fear Hollow. That's cover A. You have Wraith of God, the EC variant right there. Look at that. Mm-hmm. That's Wraith of God number 3. See, it says right there on number 3. Then we got Wraith of God, the 1972 Marvel box cover variant. I always love these. This is kind of the era I grew up in. So I really like these. Gil Kane, of course, did a ton of these and has really become, later in my career, more a real big inspiration in terms of cover art and design, because his cover art designs and layouts were just fantastic. And the execution as well. Then if you're more of, hey, give me something closer to real art, Aaron, you can get Chris Stevens' painted cover, which is actually our number 1 selling cover. It's a beautiful piece of work. I do own the original. It's sitting right over there. So anyway, you can get that. These are the 4 cover options. Look, we have some artwork. Yay, look at the artwork. From the first 3 pages here. The first 5 pages are getting colored right now, so I can't wait to see that. Of course, I have moved on. I'm going to share with you another page here in a minute. David Williams is contributing a backup story if we get to 100K. Right now, we're not even close. So spread the word, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get this thing up to 100K so we can get that extra bonus story that's written by me, drawn by David Williams, about the Imperius, which is another superhero character from my Loprestiverse universe. You can get the Wraith of God Nouveau print, signed and numbered, limited to 500 copies. Once they're gone, they're gone. Wraith of God Roughs Volume 3. Now, this is the 3rd volume that I've done of page layouts from the graphic novel. So you'll be able to get the graphic novel, and you'll be able to look in the Wraith of God Roughs and look at the layout for that, what the original layout for that page looked like, and then kind of see what it looked like in the finished art. So that's kind of cool. These are also signed and numbered and limited to the orders. So once the campaign closes, I only overprint by maybe 25 copies just to make sure if there's damaged ones that I can fill all the orders. So these are really, after the campaign closes, there's not a lot of these floating around. You can get a shot glass. There's 6, count them, 6 in a series. This is the 4th one, the nightclub. We started off with Wraith, then went to Garbage Man, then Kit Carter on the last campaign, and now this one's the nightclub. There'll be 6 shot glasses in all. You can get these poker chips, which I think are kind of cool. A set of 3. These are clay poker chips, not the cheapo plastic ones, but kind of heavy clay ones. And they are Wraith, Esther, and Dale Keown's Werewolf, which I just can't exploit enough. And then, of course, if you guys missed the first 2 issues, you can get them right there. Or you can get them on my website. You can get them fast. They're a little bit more expensive on my website, but you get them right away. These are cheaper, but you have to wait till the campaign's fulfilled, which will be summertime. So there you go. There's Mike Barron. Hey, Mike, how about coming on in? I sent you the link, you know. Mike, you're supposed to be over here. Oh, my gosh. Okay. So anyway, you'll find a link in the description of this video that will take you right to this campaign. Also, you'll find a link to my website, which will take you to my website, where you can order books that you've missed, like Kit Carter or earlier issues of Wraith of God. I think I still have all the cover options available. And so there you go. You'll want to check that out if you have not done so already. And that's pretty much all I've got for the show. I was waiting for Mike, and he's in the chat, but he's not here with us. Well, you can use Snapple. That's what I use to fill them with. It's what they call Hollywood whiskey, right? That's like tea. You should drink tea out of them. It's good fun. Or eggnog during the holiday season, which is always a shot of eggnog. Okay, let me show you a picture, if I may. Let's get rid of this. Okay, Mike, why are you in the chat? Why is Mike Barron in the chat but not back here? I sent you an email, Mike, with a link. These kids today. Okay, so this is page 6. So you've got Esther there in the trailer. Should we call it the what do you want to call it? The Wraith Mobile, and looking at the mask of this is the mask that the Wraith wears when he's Jacob, because we know his face is horribly scarred, which we haven't revealed yet, and so he wears this makeup that probably really wasn't available in 1883, but because it's kind of a superhero comic, we can do that. And so she's wondering, what does he really look like? Who's the man behind the mask? And then there he is up on the hill, sort of looking out over the distant. And so there you go. So that's page 6. Probably not going to reveal too much more art as we go forward with this, because then we start getting into spoilers. But there you go. That's what I've been working on. Although, admittedly, it's tough to get a lot of work done when you got a house full of family and it's Christmas time and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't have any superpowers. Like I said, he's more like Batman. He's just a very trained individual, and he has God on his side, or so he thinks. Absolutely. Hey, if it works for Todd McFarlane, made him the biggest name in comic art ever, why can't I use it too? I spent too much of my career trying to say, oh, that's not realistic enough, or that cape couldn't do that, or who cares if it's all comics. Let me tell you something, folks. Here's inside information from a 35-year veteran in the comics industry. If it looks cool, that's all that matters. We all like to talk about storytelling and how important that is, and blah, 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 blah. And time again, what we find from the larger fan base out there reading comics, the only thing they really care about is how cool it looks. Because we've had some of the worst comic book storytellers become some of the biggest names in comics because of their dynamic, interesting, crazy page layouts and their drawing style. And I hate to say it because I'm a guy that thinks storytelling is really important. But people, if you draw really cool, they'll lighten up on the Mike needs the link. I sent him the link. Oh my gosh, Mike, you're killing me, man. Mike, I'm emailing you the link right now again because I care. I care, Mike. And I'll finish my rant in just a second here. All right, here we go. All right, Mike, this is coming to you via email, okay? And there's the link. I just sent it to you. It just zoomed off. I heard it go. Vzz. So, oh, there he is. There he is. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together, even though he won't be able to hear you, but we'll know in your heart of hearts, he'll know that you're clapping for him. It's the legend, Mike Barron. Hello, Mike.
I'm an idiot.
I didn't want to say it, but since you're admitting to it freely, then I will. Where were you looking for it on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you sent me an email
I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Barron. So, Mike, you've got a new project.
Yeah, I do. But before we get into that,
Yes.
I want to tell you that how much I admire you as a writer.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
And one of the reasons is that your characters talk like people actually talk.
Well, I've had experience talking a lot, Mike, and I roll that experience into my writing. No, it's funny. When I was at film school, that was something I tried to develop an ear for, right? Because you can write something and then you get an actor or somebody to start reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds horrible, and so you kind of hopefully you train yourself so that you can kind of hear it yourself and you read it out loud and you go, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. Let's fix this. Let's take this word out, whatever. So thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, it takes time and experience to learn to do that.
Yeah. Well, I've had plenty of my age shows that both of us age shows. We've both had plenty of experience by this time. But you were on Mark Miller's show, right?
Yes.
Not too long ago.
Yeah.
And some people said that you said some nice things about me on there, and I appreciate it very much. I met him for the first time. He went on Graham Nolan's Landing Party Star Trek show, and he was a guest, and that was the first time I think I've ever talked to him, was on that show. He seems like a really good dude.
Yeah, he does. He seems like a regular guy. I think part of that is because he lives in Scotland.
That's right. He's not. He hasn't been poorly influenced by these here United States. He said he had to get up at like 4 o'clock and milk the cows because he said that.
Oh, come on.
No, he said he's got a farm or something with cows. He said he actually had to get up like at 4 in the morning to milk the cows. And I was like, oh my God. Oh boy. Okay. So let me bring this up and let's get I want to know all about this, not just about the campaign, but why you decided to do it and all that kind of good stuff. But you're on 2 platforms, right? You're on Fund My Comic and where's the other one?
Indiegogo and Kickstarter.
Okay. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Fund My Comic.
And you want to hear something unbelievable?
Yes.
Indiegogo just chose this as a project they like.
Are you kidding me? The people that have given you, let's say, a little bit of grief.
They give us all grief.
Yeah, well, you've gotten there's levels of grief, and you've gotten serious grief.
Well, it was Kickstarter that kicked me off at the urging of Purple-Haired Harridan, who's never read anything I wrote. Of
course. Well, they never do. They don't want to take the time. They just would rather try and destroy somebody's life.
Right.
Okay, so I brought up the Indiegogo campaign. So you're on Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and Fund My Comic. I think I listed in the description of this video, I have listed the Fund My Comic address as well as the Indiegogo address. So there's 2 places you can go if you have a preference to back Mike on Sherlock Holmes Leviathan. Do you want to play the trailer? Can I play the trailer?
Yeah.
Let's do that. There we go. Can you hear it?
When a series of shipping disasters points to a mysterious sea monster, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson leave the comfort of Baker Street and board a freighter where they encounter unexpected betrayal and come face to face with the enigmatic Captain Nemo and his submarine, the Nautilus. As they delve deeper into the case, they uncover a conspiracy involving a Russian Tsar with an airship that rains destruction on unsuspecting cities. With time running out and the world on the brink of war, the heroes must use all their skills and resources to stop a massive conspiracy and prevent global conflict. From Eisner-winning writer Mike Barron and illustrator Richard Bonk, dive into the depths of adventure and unravel the mysteries of the sea with the world's greatest detective in Leviathan. Order now on Indiegogo.
How about that? So, Mike, what was your, why won't this get smaller? There we go. What was your kind of inspiration to get into a Sherlock Holmes story of all things?
Well, I've always been a Sherlock Holmes fan. When I was a kid in Madison, Wisconsin, I was a member of a group called the Baker Street Irregulars, and there are probably hundreds of those groups all over the world, because that's what Holmes called the gang of ragamuffins running up and down the street. And he would call on them sometimes to bring him intelligence. And we would meet once a month to talk over the stories and tell us what our favorite stories were. And then about 3 years ago, I decided to watch all the Sherlock Holmes movies and TV shows I could. I don't know why, but I watched probably 50 hours of them. And I barely scratched the surface. There's more Sherlock Holmes video and film than one person can watch in a lifetime. And then about a year ago, it just snapped in my head, well, I would like to do a Sherlock Holmes story. And at the same time, I thought that I knew I had to team him up with Captain Nemo. They're both great characters of Victorian literature. They're in that big bubble of Victorian literature where people naturally interact with one another. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is probably the foremost example of that, but many other authors have mixed them up as well, including Philip Jose Farmer and a number of pastiche authors. But Holmes had never met Captain Nemo. And what attracted me to that was, at the same time, I realized I had to do a story in which they team up to prevent world war at the hands of a madman. They're both geniuses in their own way. They both do not play well in social settings. Holmes is extremely antisocial, except when he's on a job. And then he's very social with his clients, especially if he has sympathy for them. And of course, Nemo is on a quest to end war by making war on the war makers. That's the whole raison d'etre behind the Nautilus and what he does. So they meet as only Nemo's guests can meet when Nemo rams the ship that Holmes and Watson are riding on and drags him out of the water. And of course, when they get aboard the sub, he says, once on, never off. But then he and Holmes start talking and realize they have a great deal more in common than other guests that have been on board that boat. Nautilus, Nemo consents to letting Holmes pursue his quest because it coincides with Nemo's. A shipping magnate named Colonel McKinney hired Holmes to find out who was sinking his ships. Freighters, steam-powered freighters going from Argentina to England. The last two sank without a trace, and the only evidence was a sailor that they picked up at sea a week after the ship sunk, who was clinging to the underside of a lifeboat, raving like a madman, claiming that it had been sunk by a sea monster. So Holmes and Watson accept the gig, and they set out for St. Petersburg, which is where McKinney's next ship is headed. And it's loaded with precious ore from Argentina, which is very famous for ores like molybdenum and others, which are used in modern weapons. And of course, that's Nemo's concern, that the weapons are headed to Tsar Nicholas of Russia, who plans to use them to make war on his own people. And we see a little bit of that. You saw a little bit of it in the video. Tsar Nicholas hires a madman who's the mirror image of Nemo, in that he's obsessed with making war. And he, instead of a submarine, he has a flying machine that never has to touch down because of the source of his energy. When Nemo said that the Nautilus was powered by an electric engine that could permit it to go circumnavigate the globe without surfacing, everybody assumed it was a nuclear reactor. And that was my assumption too.
But you're saying that it isn't, perhaps?
No, I nobody knows for sure. That's not something I want to get into, because it's peripheral to the thrust of the drama. But it is the natural assumption. What else could it be? Unless you're going to create some fantasy motor that runs on some fantasy fuel.
Right.
But they were aware of the atom at that time. It hadn't proceeded to the point where it did in the 20th century, where they were finally able to harness it via fusion to create power. They licked fission first, because fission's a lot easier. Fission is blowing things up, but fusion is
Right.
forcing things together.
Right.
And I recently read a book called Flyboys, which is about the war in the Pacific, and how they were forced to use the hydrogen bomb. If they had not used it, the United States would have had to invade Japan by land.
Right.
And every Japanese citizen was prepared to fight to the death.
Yeah, it would have got ugly. I mean, it was ugly to use the bomb, but there would have been way more casualties if they'd had to invade. So, did you said you watched, what did you say, 500 hours or whatever it was
A lot
of hours of Sherlock. Do you have a favorite Sherlock Holmes movie or couple that were like you think are standouts?
I think that Jeremy Brett is the best Sherlock Holmes. He came closest to the character, the obsession, touching on madness. And it drove Brett insane himself, because it was the last role he undertook, and he came to identify with Holmes and had feverish fits and where he thought he was Holmes. And it eventually drove him to his bed, and he died from a variety of ailments. But if you watch his Holmes, which is a BBC series, you can see it. They're the most faithful to the books. But right behind him, I put Benedict Cumberbatch and Basil Rathbone. I think those are the three greatest screen Holmes of which I know. But there are a lot more. Like John Neville played Holmes in A Study in Terror, and that's one of several films in which Sherlock Holmes tackled Jack the Ripper. Another one is Murder by Decree.
That's the Christopher
Plummer.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a very good Holmes movie. Plummer is far too elegant and worldly to play Holmes, who has a touch of madness about him.
Yeah. Well, no, that's true. I don't know that it would be an accurate Holmes depiction. I did like that movie though, just because I like anything where they're hunting Jack the Ripper. I always think that those are always,
it's a natural. It's a natural link up, just like Holmes and Nemo.
Yeah.
Except it occurred but it's even more natural because they're both operating at the same time in the same area. I'd also like to mention the 7% Solution.
Nicholas Meyer, right?
Yes, Nicole Williamson played Holmes, and he was superb tue. I would have welcomed him back in the role.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I know I've seen that movie, but they're like you said, when you've seen like several Sherlock Holmes movies, you're like, okay, wait a minute. They start kind of blending a little bit, and you got to kind of go back and revisit it. But yeah, I'm a big Nicholas Meyer fan. Of course, he did Star Trek 2, one of my all-time favorite movies. But yeah, he did the screenplay for that and directed it, and also did Time After Time, where H.G. Wells hunts down Jack the Ripper.
That's right. In 7% Solution, Holmes teams up with Sigmund Freud.
That's right.
Played by Alan Arkin.
Arkin, yeah.
And I think that Robert Duvall is Watson.
Yes, that is correct. Who's Sherlock Holmes in that one, 7% Solution?
Nicole Williamson.
That was Nicole Williamson, right. Okay. So that was the, I was thinking of something else. There was another modern one.
Well, Robert Downey Jr.
Well, you probably find those reprehensible, right? I think
they're reprehensible. They're fun. They're fun.
Yes, they're fun. That's why, yeah.
And they might as well cast Jason Statham.
In fact, I was making a joke with my son, of course, who's now 31, but his family was over for Christmas this year, and one time we went and saw a movie on Christmas Day, and it was the opening of that first Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movie, and because we were making a joke about Nosferatu was opening on Christmas Day this year, and not exactly a family movie on Christmas Day, but so we've always joked about, hey, we should go see Nosferatu today and take the kids. But we did actually go on one Christmas Day. We went and saw that opening of that the Robert Downey Jr. one, which I enjoyed quite a bit because it was fun, but certainly not something that was true to the character of Holmes very much, at least in terms of the literary version, I don't think. But Let's see here. Okay, so we'll come back and visit this in a little bit, but I want people to know that this is your partner on this is Richard Bonk, who you've teamed up with on several other books, is your artist on this, and you've got. Do you have a platform that you prefer? Is just like whatever's easiest kind of thing?
Well, we prefer Fund My Comic
Okay,
because the creators created that platform specifically for comic book people like you and me, and who may have been shadow banned on Indiegogo. And Fund My Comic is as straightforward as they come. They have no grudges. They have no hidden trolls lurking to cross people off the list and to give them trouble. So it's the most honest platform, and we appreciate that. He also takes the least amount of funds. But I don't run my campaigns. Chris Brawley does, and Chris is also responsible for my videos, which are outstanding.
Yeah.
And Chris is a smart guy, so he runs them on 3 platforms at once. We may spread out in the future and add a few more if we think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, well, you've actually you've been quite prolific in crowdfunding. I mean, you're burying most of us in terms of product. Graham Nolan's put out a few books as well, but you're like you've got them coming and going quick. And I mean, you're like your own company at this point, Mike.
Well, we are. I mean, I have a website called baroncomics.com, and you can go there and see all the books that we've crowdfunded in the past 2.5 years, starting with Florida Man, and including Thin Blue Line and Private American, which Richard Bonk drew, and Bronze Star, which Pat Broderick drew. And Pat is halfway through the new Bronze Star, which we're going to launch next year sometime. And it's anybody who's seen that art, their jaw just hits the floor without even knowing anything about Pat, like the fact that he's 70 years old. And he's doing the greatest work of his career. It's not only the greatest work of his career, it's the greatest work anybody's ever seen. Do you have that book, Aaron?
Mike, you were supposed to send me a copy. I think we were trading books. I sent you copies of books, and you never sent me that. So
I will fix that tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
What did I send you? I just sent you something. I know because Shelley got it. Did you ask her?
What? Wait a minute. What did you send us? She might have it. She might have it tucked away someplace.
She does have it. She does have it. She's got it.
Okay. All right. I'll check with Shelley and go, what's up, man? She's probably got it sitting someplace. She's going to read it and just stuff. Sure. She orders so much stuff on Amazon. It's like stuff just comes daily, packages to our front door. And she's always like collecting these packages and stuff. And I don't know half the time when I get something. So
I know the feeling because I have that feeling.
Yeah, well, if you're married, you have that feeling, right? So, okay, I wanted to ask you. We talked about this the first time I had you on the show, kind of like your backstory and all this kind of stuff. But you started off doing. Nexus was your first comic project, right? Yeah, that's correct.
Well,
right?
There was a little clearing the throat thing that we did called Encyclopedia, Steve Rude and I, and we sold that to Pacific Presents. But then we were lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time when Capital Distribution, which was the second largest comic distributor in the world at the time, decided they wanted to publish their own line. So I spoke with the publishers and the creators, and they said, we want a costume superhero. And I went home and I brainstormed Nexus, and I wrote the first 12 pages the way I wrote comics for 20 years, which was by drawing each page out by hand, including every figure, rocket ship, landscape. I'm not a great artist, but I'm good enough that anybody can look at my stuff and see what I'm drawing at a glance and understand it.
Well, Giffen did that too, right? Keith Giffen was always doing. I never worked with Keith. I mean, I knew him, but I never worked with him. But he supposedly did when he wrote, he would do like layout for him in his script.
I didn't know that. He did an issue of Nexus, by the way. I do know that Harvey Kurtzman and Archie Goodwin wrote that way.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard that as well. So you were doing that, and then you did you go from Nexus to Badger? Or
yes.
Did you? Okay. So when did you, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because today one of the features we're going to go through is my favorite comic covers from the 80s. And so you broke into the mainstream Marvel and DC in the 80s. So what did someone contact you? Did you contact them? What was your first transition from independent comics like Nexus and the Badger to like Marvel or DC?
Well, Mike Gold was my editor at first, and then he got hired by DC as their editor, and he asked me to come aboard. Atari Force was my first assignment, but Mike was the one that asked me to write The Flash. As for the Punisher, Carl Potts called me up out of the blue because he liked Badger, and he said, "Mike, I'd like you to write the new Punisher series," and that's how I came to write that.
So so you did The Flash before the Punisher series,
No,
right?
I think I did the Punisher first. I'm just mentioning that because Mike Gold was my editor at first, and then at DC.
So you ended up, so Potts saw your Badger work and gave you a call, and that's how you landed the Punisher gig.
Yes.
And so you were working were you working on the Flash and Punisher simultaneously?
I believe I must have been, although my run on the Flash just lasted a year, but my run on Punisher lasted 5 years.
Well, yeah, but your run on the Flash, though, you launched the new Flash.
That's right, from issue number one.
Jackson Geis, right?
Yes.
Which Geis?
Jackson, yeah, and we're still working together. I had a story in Graham Nolan's Two-Fisted Manly Tales that Butch illustrated.
Really?
Yeah. I'd love to work with him again.
Oh yeah, that was in Graham's book. That was like the guy on the train. The what's it called?
on a train.
Work on a train. Yes, that's right.
That's a true story, by the way.
Yeah, that was. Boy, you could write one about a lot of stuff going on the subway these days in New York.
Well,
there's a
It's funny that you
speak of the devil,
because I created Private American to show people what the Punisher should be doing if I were writing him.
Yeah.
And of course, it ignited fury on the left, and they attacked me, and that's why I got kicked off Kickstarter.
Sure.
And I had a second issue in the works, but it was predicated on the assumption that things were going to go as they have been, and then in the recent election overturned everything. So I decided to rewrite Private American 2 from the ground up. And I'm glad I did, because the situation had changed so drastically that it just lit a fire under me. And I saw so many new situations and opportunities. And all I can say is people are going to love it.
Well, if they, I'm sure if you guys got into the first one, I'm sure whatever Mike's brewing here for the second one is going to be.
I'll send you that.
Okay.
You do have Bronze Star. Shelley has it.
Okay. All right. We'll dig around here for it.
I'll send you the.
Well, in all fairness, my studio is an absolute mess, and it could be buried under something that I have not uncovered yet. But my goal was to get it cleaned up this holiday season before the new year. We'll see if that actually
all right. Good luck.
comes to fruition.
I'll give you a week.
Okay. Where did I just see something here? Oh, Stippling Vaughn says maybe an add-on moving forward should be a Mike Barron layout book. That would be interesting, Mike, to publish a little book of your script layouts.
I found these Badger scripts.
Wait, hang on a second here. Let me make you big.
I have a handful of these, and that's what it looked like.
So do you type out a script, or do you just write it with the panels like that?
Well, that's how I wrote it for 20 years. That's all I wrote. And I can hardly remember a single instance of editorial interference. But now I type full script. They're very terse scripts. They're not wordy. It's everything you need to know.
So do you add dialogue then when you get the artwork back?
No, absolutely not. I think it's essential to provide the artist with the dialogue from Jump Street. And the reason is the artist needs to know how the actor will be acting. And I often will suggest actors for certain parts. I don't insist the artist base the character on them. I'm just giving them an idea of physically how I see them.
I know there's exceptions to every rule, but just generally speaking, when you do your script and you turn it over to the artist and the art comes back, do you ever go? Do you feel like the script that you've turned into the artist, that's your finished draft, or do you find yourself going back and adding and subtracting once you see the artwork? Never do that, huh?
Well, here's what happens. Anytime I go over anything I've written, I find a way to improve it by taking words out. Seriously, but most artists with whom I work, they follow it pretty religiously. Some don't, and for them, I just say, please pencil in the word balloons, because if an artist doesn't do that, and there's some great artists I've worked with who get carried away with the art, and they're not thinking about the word balloons.
Right.
And when the art is finished, it's beautiful. But if you're going to add the dialogue, it's going to cover up a lot of intricate work that they put a lot of effort into.
I do that to myself. So, yeah.
And I have to say that the words are essential to a comic. A comic is words and pictures on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And the less words you use, the more important they are, if you know what you're doing.
Right.
Because you don't want a verbose comic. We've all opened a comic and seen 250 words in 8 caption boxes covering up the action, and the mind clouds over and just groan. And you say, a comic has to move with a certain rapidity. And if I spend the 25 minutes reading all the words on this page, it just kills my momentum right there and the story.
No, I totally agree. And I find, I find that rarely do I add. I'm usually like you, I'm editing my dialogue and going, because like you said, you find you've got a panel or a page going and you start putting those balloons in, you're like, there's too many words. I gotta edit this down.
Absolutely.
To fit into this space, and I can say the same thing with half as many words. I think sometimes writers get carried away with, get that kind of Chris Claremont disease where it's like, how many words can I put in? And I love Chris is a nice guy. I worked with him. He was great to work with, but he's very, as you said, verbose. And you sit there and think, you don't want the word dialogue to overpower the artwork. You want them to work in conjunction with one another. And you get too many words. And you're right. You've got like reading Long Shot or something like that from the 80s that Chris wrote over artwork. And the word balloons are just fatiguing. And you're kind of like, I don't know if I can finish this. I got to take a break. So I agree with you. And I find myself doing the same thing.
What you want to do is to create a situation where the words and the pictures act in concert to create an unforgettable moment.
There you go. I love that. It's a great, way to put it. Let me grab this real quick, if you don't mind. Robert the Bruce for $5. Thanks for another great episode. Aaron, the beard is looking great. I just kind of trimmed it up a little bit today. Mr. Barron, thank you for all the great books you've written. You're a comic legend. Indeed,
thank you, Robert. May I call you Bob the Bruce?
There you go, Bob the Bruce. Shorten it up a little bit, talking about being a little bit more economical with your words. So what was the deal with The Flash? Because I'm curious. I feel like I asked you this before, but you were on there for just a year. And you had some great concepts in that book where I remember Wally West like having to eat like 100 pizzas or whatever because he burned so many calories, which I never thought of, but it made total sense, right? So you were only on that book for a year. Was that? Did they move you? Did you?
I didn't know what to do next. I said, Mike, I'm going to have to quit the book. I don't know what to do next. That would not happen today. I'm a very different writer than I was then. Hopefully, a better writer, but.
Well, how do you mean? How do you mean? I'm gonna task you on that a little bit. How do you mean?
Well, the reason what I mean is I would not run out of ideas. I would brainstorm. I have new methods of inspiration. Mm-hmm. Inspiration can come from anywhere, but one of them is to take a notepad, and I carry a notepad and pen with me everywhere I go, and I urge every one of you to do the same. And when you run into a dead end, you don't know what happens next. You sit down with that notepad and you start writing what could possibly happen. And it doesn't matter how crazy or how deus ex machina it is. If you keep doing that, you'll see the way forward. And you'll see it maybe by writing something so insane and stupid that it throws you to the other side of the room, mm-hmm. and you see a rational course of action. Another thing is I'm always working on 5 to 6 projects at once. So if I run into a wall with one, I'll switch to another project. And the subconscious works. I keep a pen and pad next to my bed because I'll think of ideas in the middle of the night, and
Yeah.
I know I'll forget them if I don't write them down.
Right.
So I get up right then and I write them down.
The same thing. Do you find that, especially at the amount of that you're writing, I write content like considerably less than you have, obviously, over your career. But I still find occasionally I have to be careful because I have certain themes that I really like. And, in terms of, morals or whatever that I'm putting in my story, and I got to be careful that I don't repeat them just in a different format. Do you ever catch yourself going, I've kind of gone down this road before, but with different characters, or do you even worry about that?
Well, if I find a situation that I used 25 years ago, and it arises organically from the story I'm writing, I can't stress how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a way to do it better, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Even though I may have used the same situation before. I can't give you a specific example of that, except that I know that it has come up, that I figure if it's a couple of decades old, it's safe for me to reintroduce it to a whole bunch of new readers. But the thing about the situation rising organically out of the story is maybe you have a joke you want to insert, or a turn of phrase, or something clever that doesn't involve words at all, like with the hands.
Mm-hmm.
Like with a yo-yo, for example. Now, people don't know this, but a yo-yo was originally used as a weapon because they're heavy, and you spin them out, you whack somebody in the face with it, and it comes right back into your hand. I'm not joking about
It's
that.
like a boomerang with a string attached.
Yeah. And I have not used that in a comic, but I'm waiting to. And
how is that not in Florida Man? I can't believe you haven't used that in Florida Man. That
Florida Man's not a yo-yo kind of guy. I mean, when Gary gets in a fight, he's just drunk and flailing around,
So, do you have certain? I got two parts to this, but we'll start with this. Do you have certain characteristics, or human condition, if you will, that you find particularly fascinating, that you kind of like to revisit? Certain plights that we face as human beings, right? We all sort of draw from, what's my purpose or in life, or, it doesn't have to be that big of a big picture thing, but do you have certain, like, the struggle of, acceptance or whatever it might be? Is there any certain characteristics that you really like to explore and you find yourself kind of going back to with different characters, maybe?
Well, you can call it a search for justice or a search for vengeance, but the vigilante looms large in the American imagination. Real vigilantes and fictional vigilantes. You could say the United States is the land of the vigilante, and I've done my fair share, certainly Punisher and Private American, and the series of books I'm writing with Blaine Pardo called Tenure. And that's a popular theme in what I write. It's not because I think they'll be commercial, although it is a commercial idea. It's just that I've always enjoyed those types of stories, like Death Wish, Dirty Harry, The Equalizer. And by the way, if you haven't seen Denzel Washington's Equalizer, I think it's the best vigilante movie I've ever seen, and it stands heads and shoulders above all the rest. Not only for its seriousness of purpose and its realism, but for the dialogue as well. Whereas you have something like Nobody, starring that guy from Better Call Saul, Bob Odenkirk. Did you see that?
What?
The movie called Nobody, starring Bob Odenkirk.
Oh, I have seen scenes from it. I have not yet saw it, but I heard it was good. I thought it was.
It's good up to a point. And the point is when he and his aging father, played by Christopher Lloyd, take on a huge building filled with thousands of faceless assassins armed with machine guns and start blasting them away. The same thing happens in The Beekeeper with Jason Statham. At the end, he takes on thousands of faceless assassins armed with machine guns blasting away. It begs credulity. I just don't buy it. it's just staged for its own sake. It doesn't rise organically from the situation, because a lot of the people that Jason Statham blows away in The Beekeeper are simply government employees. They might be Secret Service, they might be paramilitary, who are just ordered into battle. They have no axe to grind. They're not criminals. They haven't hurt anyone. They've just been ordered to go kill that guy by their superiors.
Well, that's what the movie going audience seems. You got to get your body count in there, Mike. You can't be too sophisticated or you'll lose your audience.
Apparently.
Okay, so if you're writing a vigilante, then okay, like let's just say the Punisher. How careful do you have to, or what's the process of understanding that this is the main character of the book or the story, right? So he has to be sympathetic to a certain degree, but you don't want to make him, he's a vigilante out for vengeance. So you want to make him authentic, but at the same time, you got to make him somewhat sympathetic so that your audience can identify with him. What's the challenge with that?
The solution is that when the police are unable or unwilling to arrest the bad guys, then it becomes a question of justice. It's not so much vengeance as it is justice.
Okay.
You look what's happening on the subways in New York City. The people of New York are sick and tired of it. They're crying out for vengeance. That's why they exonerated Daniel Penny. And that's why this latest horrific murder by an illegal alien is causing so much reaction, even as the governor says, the steps I have taken have made the subway safer. It's a lie, and everybody knows it's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And so they say, where's the justice in this? Where's the balance? And that's always a good motivation. And it side slips the accusation, well, you're just bloodthirsty and you want vengeance. And of course, there's a lot of legitimate vengeance movies, more than you can shake a stick at. I'd like to name one that's one of my favorites. It's Valdez is Coming, starring Burt Lancaster. It's a great Western. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to check it out.
Well, so basically the idea is, and it makes perfect sense, that you take a vigilante character, but he's dealing out justice that everybody identifies as this guy deserves it. This person needs to be brought to justice, and this is the guy to do it. So it becomes not just this guy's like a personal vendetta for this guy, and then you got to say, well, is that really a noble cause? But then it becomes this idea of just handing out justice, which everybody can identify with, and then suddenly your vigilante becomes a hero. I mean, is that what we're talking about, basically?
In a way, yeah. I mean, look at Die Hard. It's Bruce Willis isn't out for vengeance. He's trying to save the people from annihilation in that building, because he figures it out, and the Alan Rickman character, great actor though. I think that was his first movie role.
Yeah, it was. That's pretty. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't really look at Die Hard though as I mean, I guess it is, but I mean the violence. You're putting a guy in who's not a bad guy in a situation where he has to kill somebody to save others. But when I'm talking more about somebody that, again, like the Punisher, or I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I mean, there's others out there. I mean, Batman could be considered this, except he doesn't kill anybody. So that kind of takes the edge off him a little bit. Right. But the Punisher does kill people. And so setting him up as someone who's doling out justice and not just, killing people he doesn't like, that makes him more palatable. I
think so.
Okay.
But you can also identify with a bloodthirsty killer if he's killing the right people.
Well, like what was the television show with the serial killer that killed other serial killers? Dexter. Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting point to bring up, because I remember seeing that show and I was just like, I watched a little bit of it, but not a ton of it. But I just thought, how can you identify with a serial killer? But that you suddenly, everybody he's killing is, because he's only killing the serial killers. So he's basically a serial killer of serial killers. So therefore, he's only killing people that should be killed anyway and stopped. So, I mean, that's a really interesting.
It is. I just want a quick note to Pantheon. No, I haven't seen that movie yet, but I intend to. Silent Night by John Woo.
I don't. I am not as engaged in pop culture media like I used to be. I mean, it's like I don't see a lot of films anymore. I don't read as much. I read a lot of nonfiction, but I don't read fiction as much anymore. It's very interesting. It used to be my entire life was, comics and reading and going to movies. And it seems like now all I'm doing is doing some writing and drawing and playing with my grandkid.
Well, I salute you, Aaron. I think that's no better use of your time.
It probably is, but I don't know if it's the best way to expand your palette for writing and art, is kind of avoiding everybody else's writing and art. But
I think that's an excellent idea. If you're probably not easily influenced by others, and I could tell from your writing that you're not. And I also see that you're mining a streak of ore that has an infinite stretch before it. So I wouldn't worry about running out of material if I were you. You've chosen your material well.
Thank you. Did, Howard Chaykin once said to me that, he was talking about his technique for writing and how he would put like ideas down on note cards and then kind of like scenes or whatever and move them around. And also about, characterization, that he would write down, okay, who's my character? Who is this person? And write down all these details about this person so they knew him inside out before he started writing. I tend to more conceptualize who a character is, and then sort of as I'm writing them and putting them in situations, I'll sit there and go, okay, well, if I was this person and had this feeling about this, or, this disposition, how would I react? And I kind of go that way. Are you one that sort of like spells everything out before you start writing, or do you kind of find your story as you're writing?
I do find my stories I'm writing. I believe that a writer has to surprise himself before he can surprise others. And that's, again, means that points to what I mean by saying that story developments, whether it's words or actions, have to rise organically out of the story and seem natural. They can be shocking and surprising. But when you look at the story in its totality, they're easily explained. And you say, well, of course he was going to react like that. Another thing I do is I'll base characters on people I know.
Oh, really? Do you ever worry that they're going to, hey, that's me in your comic, Mike?
No, I don't.
You don't accidentally name them something that sounds similar to the person that you're using as so it doesn't give anything away.
No, but you can also base your characters on real people that you don't know. Like if you're reading a history book, you're reading about Kit Carson, for example, was a great American vigilante, and you can base a character around him. There's a book called Blood and Thunder, which is an excellent history book about the settling of the West, and has a lot about Kit Carson there and about the Indians with whom he interacted. And I was surprised to learn that one of these tribes in the Southwest on the Colorado Plateau, I don't know if it was Hopi or Navajo or another one, but their chief was 6 feet 7 inches tall.
Wow.
And you don't think of Indians that big, but all these Indians were big. They weren't Apache. Apache were smaller people, but these Indians were all huge. And it gave me inspiration for a story I wrote called Scorpio. It's a novel about a ghost who only appears under a blazing sun.
Do you find, I probably asked you this before when you were on, but I find it interesting because I would never feel comfortable writing a novel. I don't. But because to me, there's a really big difference between what I call entertainment writing, which is basically scripts, and then writing a novel. You bounce back and forth between the two. What is different between writing a novel and a script for you? I mean, how do you have to change your mindset when you're doing that?
The difference between writing a comic book script and writing a novel is the difference between water skiing and skiing down Mount Everest.
Exactly. And I don't want to ski down Mount Everest, Mike. So,
Well, yeah, but if you become a good skier, it's fun, and you lose yourself in the narrative, and you don't think, "Oh my God, I'm dragging these words out of my head with a pliers." It's not like that at all. Once you get the groove, you're
right.
excited about the writing. Once you understand story, you don't make a wrong turn. And what does that mean to understand story? Well, it only comes with practice and experience. There was a great British novelist named John Brain who wrote Room at the Top, and he also wrote a book called Writing Your Novel. And in it, he says nobody should attempt to write a novel before they're 40 years old because they don't have enough experience to describe the world realistically.
Right.
And he had a point. Now, there are exceptions to this, like Carson McCulloch, who wrote The Heart is a Lonely Hunter when she was 23. And William Styron, who wrote As I Lay Dying when he was like 26. But most people, it takes a while for them to master writing the novel. It took me 30 years to learn how to write a novel because that's a slow learner. But after all the changes I've gone through my life, up, down, sideways, when I returned to writing a novel seriously, I realized that I had come to understand story. And so it no longer bothered me. It didn't frighten me. I was not at all awed by the prospect. I'm ready to dive in. I know what I have to do.
Well, when you're writing a novel or even a short story, something that's just prose, and obviously your descriptors, however you want to, you're spending several sentences perhaps describing something of importance, where in a comic book, you don't do that, right? Normally, at least I don't. And so do you get to a point where you're writing a novel and you're like, maybe I'm getting too wordy, I'm dragging this out too long here and I need to condense it? Or is it just such a different format that it's natural to spend time, a paragraph describing, what a guy's wearing or whatever in a particular scene?
Well, it depends on the writer. There's such a thing as a seductive narrative voice. Have you read any Tom Wolfe? He wrote The Bonfire of the Vanities.
Right. God, I'm trying to think if I actually have. I mean, I know who he is, obviously, and a lot of his work, but I'm trying to think if I actually read any of his novels. Probably not, but so treat me like an idiot and go ahead and...
Tom will spend 2 or 3 paragraphs describing what somebody's wearing. But his style is so engaging that you're not bored. You're not tempted to skip over it. And that's what I mean by a seductive narrative voice. At the other end of the extreme is James Ellroy, the author of L.A. Confidential and many other modern noirs, whose sentences are like machine gun bursts, often 3 or 4 words or less. He came into the room. He drew his gun. He shot Lubbock in the chest. He went over to the table. There were donuts on the table. He picked up a frosted cruller, and that's the way he writes. But it works because he's got the whole story planned out.
Right. That's a very interesting observation, because it is. I mean, you can read boring novels that you're just like, oh, I can't get through this, or you can read something where, like you said, they're describing 3 paragraphs of what someone's wearing, but they do it in such a way that it's really sort of interesting. And it keeps you going in the flow of the story. So I guess, do you read, or before, when you said it took you 30 years to learn how to write a novel, do you read novels, or did you read novels to say, just for the pure enjoyment and kind of, or did you actually study how it was being put together, and you're like trying to understand the technique behind it?
I read them for enjoyment, but you can't help but admire the technique when you're reading it and see how things are done. Right now I'm reading a Martin Cruz Smith novel. He wrote Gorky Park, and his character Arkady Renko is a classic of modern detective fiction. And his sentences are all very short too, and they're just riddled with dry humor, and that's why people love him. I can tell I can finish this book. And I've read books 75% of the way through, and I suddenly realized I don't care, and I set them down and I never pick them up again.
I was reading Jurassic Park, and I got right to the point. Those are people who remember, who have read the book, there's a section in there where they start talking about genetic code. And then there's just, for some weird reason, Crichton put in pages and pages of genetic code.
I've seen it.
And I put the book down at that point and I never picked it up again.
You just skip past that stuff.
I know, but it was like, what is this? And I thought it was one of those times where it was in the evening and I was like, okay, that's a good break. And then for some reason I never picked it up again. But I was like, I just thought it was the oddest thing. I was like, why? I can see you put an example of the genetic code in there for maybe a paragraph or whatever to make a point. But there was like pages of this stuff. And I was like, what is he trying to do here?
Well,
Except bore me.
Not all of Crichton's decisions were brilliant.
No, that's true. He had great ideas, though, or does have great ideas. And I guess that's
yes,
the thing.
he did. He did.
The Geek Easy has a question here. Do you plot everything out ahead of time or have a general sense of where you want to go? Well, I'll jump in there first and then you follow me up, Mike. But I'll just say that one thing I always do is I figure out my ending so I know where I'm going. And then I just get scene ideas and I start writing them out. And then occasionally I'll move them if they're not in the right place. But I tend to be a very linear writer. Once I figure out and know where I want to go, I will start at okay, this is how it's going to begin. And then how do I get to here? It's like writing a mystery. If you don't know the end of the mystery and who did it and how they did it, it's pretty hard to write a path to get there. And, but so that's pretty much the preparation I do. What about you?
I outlined. I'm a firm believer in outlines.
Mm-hmm.
And the ending is often hidden in clouds to me. I know
really
that there's a template in my head.
Mm-hmm.
A story's a dynamic narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end. I often liken it to a good pop song. You've got the tonic, which is the opening stanza. Then you've got the bridge, which changes everything. It perhaps introduces an element of uncertainty or danger. And then you have the hook, where the tension created by the bridge is resolved. And this happens countless times, especially in an adventure novel, is the hero is up, the hero is down, the hero is up, the hero is down. Because if it's all static, you don't have an entertaining story, at least not the type of story that I write. The ending is often unclear to me. And there's a couple things about the outline. It serves two purposes. One is a guide for what I'm going to say. And the second is to excite interest in the story. Every outline I write, I hone and polish so that I can hand it to somebody and have them read it. And then I want them to throw it down and say, holy shit, where's the book? But as I approach the ending, my mind is working in overtime. How do I resolve this, both rationally and to my satisfaction, to the reader's satisfaction? And to me, the perfect ending comes as both a complete surprise and, in retrospect, inevitable. And that's a hard trick to pull off.
Yeah.
But I always point to the ending of the original Planet of the Apes as a perfect example of that.
But what you're saying basically is then you've got a situation and then you let that situation play out and then eventually it's going to tell you exactly how it should end.
That's true. And that's true of characters too. And you know this, that once you create a character that's three-dimensional, that character is going to turn around and tell you what happens next. I also think that a reader has to surprise himself before he can, a writer has to surprise himself before he can surprise the reader. And so I'm open to all sorts of things as I write, and ideas will come to me as I write. The more I write, the more possibilities there are.
Mm-hmm.
The more research I do, the more possibilities I see. So once you start doing research, that opens up whole new avenues you never thought about.
Yeah.
I mean, you look into what ores are used to make fissionable material, and you find out, well, of course, there's uranium and radium and how, what ores go into an electric car battery, and you find out that it's cadmium and other things that are mined in South Africa. And then you think, well, how are these mined? And you look into it and you find that a lot of it's mined by child slave labor, and that adds new possibilities to the story.
Mm. Are you I don't know if you're saying the word, if you're a slave to structure, but are you more about intellectually speaking, are you more about the structure of the story when you're putting the story together? Okay, I need a hook here. I need this. Or do you like I write more on feel, just based on my experience in film and other things like that. It's like you can just feel when this scene goes on too long, or this needs to be punched up. This fight scene needs to be longer, or there's no threat here. I got to make this more threatening so that because that's how I do it. I write it by feel, and I'll be going, this just doesn't feel right. It's not working. And then you kind of add something here and there that makes it work. Or do you have, like you said, you have your outline, you're going, okay, well, I need this to happen here. I need something I need a hook here. I need, a resolution here. How do you work in terms of that?
Well, those are structural beats, and they're ingrained in my mind. But as I said before, a writer has to surprise himself before he can surprise the reader. And I'm always open to surprise, but understanding story, I also know how to keep the narrative lively. I don't ever want to bore the reader.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's all action and fighting.
Mm-hmm.
You can be fascinating just relaying how a guy created a business. I mean, if you find humor in it, or if you find pathos in it, you have to be open to all these possibilities. And here's the truth: is that a good writer can lead a reader anywhere, no matter how crazy the situation is objectively.
Mm-hmm.
A good writer can make a reader believe it. And the proof is in the pudding, like Jules Verne. Novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, A Journey to the Center of the Earth, The First Man on the Moon.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was actually in film school, and when Star Trek 4, the one with the whales, came out, and I heard the premise for it they were working on, I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. They go back in time to get humpback whales. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Who just ruined the franchise? And then, of course, it ended up being the biggest moneymaker of all the Trek films, and perhaps the most entertaining. And so it just goes to show you can take any premise, like you said, and if you put it together right and you do it right, you can make an entertaining read out of it.
That's right.
So, interesting. Okay, let's take a quick look at your campaign again. I assume you probably aren't going to mind me doing that.
No.
So we'll, if I can find the right button here. All right, here we go. For those of you just joining us, let's run Mike's trailer here again and talk about his campaign a little bit.
When a series of shipping disasters points to a mysterious sea monster, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson leave the comfort of Baker Street and board a freighter where they encounter unexpected betrayal and come face to face with the enigmatic Captain Nemo and his submarine, the Nautilus. As they delve deeper into the case, they uncover a conspiracy involving a Russian Tsar with an airship that rains destruction on unsuspecting cities. With time running out and the world on the brink of war, the heroes must use all their skills and resources to stop a massive conspiracy and prevent global conflict. From Eisner-winning writer Mike Barron and illustrator Richard Bonk, dive into the depths of adventure and unravel the mysteries of the sea with the world's greatest detective in Leviathan. Order now on Indiegogo.
Excellent. Okay, so this is 66 pages long. Obviously, it's in color. We see a lot of the artwork here. You're getting this is wrapping up relatively soon. You've only got 6 days left here on Indiegogo, but it's going through various lengths of time on different platforms, right? They're not all.
Yeah, I think it will remain on in demand. On Kickstarter. We'll see. The book is finished. All the art has been finished for a long time because Richard Bonk is a terrific artist. He's both fast and good. And I'm cooking up a new project for him, which he'll probably finish in about a month. No, he's not that fast, but he's fast and he's good.
Well, guys that work in the industry and actually had bills to pay, we learned pretty quickly how to meet deadlines and get stuff done in a reasonable amount of time. So do you approach, well, I guess you're not running the campaign though, so maybe you're not the right guy to ask, but since the book is already done, most of us will start a campaign, we'll start working on the book. And then when the book's ready to go to the printer, we'll end the campaign and send it to the printer. And, but you're obviously these books are getting done faster than, say, most of us. And so do you leave it open till you hit a certain price point that you need to like cover all your expenses, or when do you guys determine when to end the campaign? Because obviously if it's already done and the campaign's still going, how do you make the decision of when we're gonna end the campaign?
Well, that's up to Chris, because Chris
Okay.
runs my campaigns, but generally we like to have the book finished before we launch. And if you look at our record, we deliver on time or ahead of schedule.
That's pretty remarkable for good for you guys. That because I know that there's always, we have a good solid crowd that is willing to, basically front us money to do these projects. And if you have a good track record like I do and you do, and other guys, Graham, Andy, other guys Billy have great reputations for getting books out on time when they're scheduled, or at least close to that, that people trust you. But you still get a lot of people are reluctant to back early because they want to make sure they're going to get the project. And so that's got to be helpful to you guys' campaigns to actually start with a book already done. So you're like, as soon as this thing closes, we're shipping kind of thing, or we're going to the printer, or however you want to do it. That's quite an advantage that you guys are able to do that. So I tip my Sherlock Holmes hat to you, Mike, for being so professional and responsible in handling these.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I could not do it without my team headed by Chris.
Who does your coloring?
Gabe Eltaib did the cover, and Rob Epps did the interiors.
Okay. All right.
There, look, wait, go back to that picture with him playing the violin. Go down a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the other way. There we go.
Wait,
yeah.
Right there. What's that on the table in front of him?
I see a rack of test tubes and a syringe.
That's right.
Are you saying that? Are you saying that our friend Sherlock Holmes is a heroin addict? What are you saying, Mike?
Cocaine.
Cocaine. That's what it was, right? Was it always cocaine, or why am I thinking
it was always cocaine?
Even in 7% solution, he was a druggie in that one. They kind of played that up, didn't they? Yeah. Or am I thinking of a different one?
No, that was it. That was the 7% solution as a double meaning. It means the percentage of cocaine in the fluid he was shooting up, and also it applied to the mystery that he and Sigmund Freud solved, which I don't remember because I haven't seen the movie in years.
Did how much? And I got to be honest, I have not read any of the source material for Sherlock Holmes. I'm just a product of the films, but these were written late 1800s, right? Is when
1880 to 1895, I would say.
Right. So how controversial do you think? Was that played up? The drug angle, was that played up much in the books? Was it sort of hinted at but not really spelled out, or was it really spelled out in the books?
Geez, I would have to go back and reread them, but I'm pretty sure it was spelled out in the books. There's a terrific book called From Holmes to Sherlock. It's written by some German guy. I have it in the basement. It's a huge tome, which includes a biography of Conan Doyle, an explanation of where Sherlock Holmes came from, the fight over his estate, how he tried to end Holmes and how the publisher dragged him back into it. And then the stage adaptations, the radio adaptations, the film adaptations, the TV adaptations. It's exhaustive, but it's fun to read. And if you're a Holmes fan, I can't recommend it too highly.
There you go. According to Pastmaster Dan, injection is better than snorting. So, yeah, it's interesting. Because we think of, this kind of stuff in the modern age. Everybody knows what cocaine is. Everybody knows about drugs and drug abuse and drug use. But you got to wonder back at that period of time, it must have been going on because he wasn't making this up out of whole cloth. You know what I mean? But it's like,
that's the thing about Victorian age. Nobody would say such stuff out loud. But it was going on, particularly with the upper wastrel class. And, you know, I love these Hammer movies. There's one Hammer movie, Drink the Blood of Dracula, which begins with these rich wastrels shooting up drugs and getting drunk and chasing women into the forest to rape them. And the beginning is exhilarating filmmaking. Of course, it's disgusting, but it paints a picture of Victorian England we don't see too often, but no doubt existed. You've heard of the Hellfire Club.
Yeah.
That's an echo of what happened in Victorian England. There was a real Hellfire Club where these upper class wastrels with time to spare and too much money would amuse themselves at others' expense.
Yeah. When you think about that period of time and the separation, I mean, we still see it today. You know, the classes, right? But the aristocrats back in that period of time, you know, probably had so little regard for people on the lower end of the financial scale that they would, you know, treat them like animals at points. It wouldn't surprise me a bit. Dale A says the drug use is only mentioned a few times. I believe later Watson says he slowly weaned Holmes off of it.
That's true.
So there you go. Interesting. So anyway, in this particular graphic novel that you're doing here, it's 66 pages. And basically, in a nutshell, Sherlock Holmes teams up with Captain Nemo of the Nautilus for an adventure, and that's really sort of a precursor to World War I. Is that correct?
It hints at World War I. Certainly, what the Tsar is trying to do would have ignited it if he hadn't been stopped by Holmes and Nemo. But there's a lot more to it than that. There's some guest appearances from great Victorian characters you would never dream possible unless you looked at my X feed today. But anyhow, Aaron, I want to say thank you for having me on. You are too kind, sir, and for putting up with my Luddite inability.
Is it time for bed, Mike? Do you have to go to bed now? Is that what you're telling me?
That's right.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I enjoyed talking writing with you. And I know everybody in the audience loved your insights into that stuff, because you know we have a lot of artists and writers in the audience who can gain quite a bit from what you have to say and teach. So thank you for coming on. You guys, Sherlock Holmes Leviathan, you can find it on 3 platforms: Fund My Comic, Indiegogo, and Kickstarter. You'll find links to Fund My Comic and Indiegogo in the description of this video. And please go and check it out and back it if you can, because, you know, Mike never disappoints. And this is just a great high concept idea that looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. So thank you, Mike, for joining me.
Thank you.
I'm going to carry on without you, but
I don't know how you do it.
Huh?
I don't know how you do it.
Well, you just download a lot of visuals and put them up on the screen, and it kind of takes care of itself. So
I see.
We'll do that after you're gone. But thanks, Mike. We appreciate it, and we'll have you on again. Take care, buddy.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Okay, I'm still here, so don't go anywhere, guys. Don't go anywhere. Show's not over yet, but Mike, you know, Mike, he can only stay up so long, and he's got to go. So I love how I love how Mike, he won't even hang in there. He's like, hey, I got to go. See ya. But anyway, do check out his campaign. He has some really good concepts and stuff out there. And Geek Easy says, cocaine helps. For who is the question? There you go. Why is Aaron still on? Well, Mike, let me tell you why, Marcus. Let me tell you why I'm still on. There you go. That's what you get. It's only 5:30 here, so we're not done yet. Okay, so I'm not going to dismiss you guys because we are not done yet. I owe you guys my covers for the 80s, my favorite covers, which I was going to get to with Mike, but then we started talking about writing, and he's such a great resource. You know, I love talking to other artists and writers about their technique and their approach and how different they might be from what I do. And it's just fascinating. So I hope you guys appreciated Mike's nuggets there of wisdom, because everybody does things differently, and yet you find a variety of people creating stuff that's really, really good, and yet there is no one formula. But I think if you, like, as an artist, I look at different people and I'll take bits and pieces of what they do and sort of incorporate it into what I'm doing and kind of create my own thing. And I think writing is no different. I mean, there's certain, I had mentioned Howard Chaykin, and Howard has this technique of how he does it. And I don't do anything like that. But I found it useful to find out how he approached stuff, just like I find it useful and how Mike approaches things, and see, well, okay, maybe I should do that. Maybe that'll make me more efficient. Maybe that'll create some ideas in my head, or give me more depth of story that I wouldn't normally get by doing it the way I do it. So anyway, so I have, we're in the decade of the 80s now. We've been doing my favorite covers from the 80s. Now, this is not to say that there aren't other great covers out there. I'm just saying I can't show like 100 covers. I mean, I could, but so I've got like 13 or something. So I got quite a few. But these are some of my favorites from the 80s, and they're not in any particular order. So we'll just jump in here and start rolling. I'm going to we'll start with this right here. This is the Rocketeer. This was like the collected soft cover that had like, oh look, all 5 action chapters are in this. Of course, the Rocketeer premiered as a backup in Star Slayer, Mike Grell's comic from Pacific Comics, and correct me if I'm wrong, 84, I think. And I love this cover. First of all, it's kind of Dave showing off with his watercolor technique here. Interesting dynamic, so appropriate for the time period that the Rocketeer takes place in. This is really an interesting concept too. Not something that in the early 80s you would have thought would have struck like it did. Now, it'd be foolish to say that the artwork didn't have a lot to do with the success of this comic. But the nostalgia of it is just, it's quite fascinating. It's like when you watch 1940s films or 30s films, if you do. If you don't, you should. It just, we're able to look back in history and romanticize time periods that, I'm sure during World War II, it was a terrifying time. You didn't know if we were going to be, under the iron boot of fascism, or if we were going to win and free the world. I mean, people must have been just scared to death. But you look back on it knowing how it all turned out, and you're just like, you can romanticize that stuff so much, especially the 30s too, like this. It's almost like fantasy. It like catapults you into a different time that none of us were alive for. And I think that charm made this, as well as the incredible artwork, made this such a popular comic. But a great piece by Dave Stevens. And while I've got a couple Dave Stevens here, so let's just go ahead and do those. This one is, frankly, it's iconic at this point. The Valkyrie cover, this Airboy number 5 from Eclipse. Look at that, bi-weekly, only 50 cents. Boy, don't you wish those days were back. I like looking back. And 80s were such a great time in comics. And it's like I told Mike earlier, I got back into comics in the mid to late 80s. I was kind of hanging around in the earlier 80s. I wasn't reading regularly. And then when I was in college, and I think I told this story last week, I'd go to Golden Apple Comics on Melrose Avenue because I was down in LA for 3.5 years, going to school. And so I would always it got to a point where I would go to Golden Apple every once in a while. And then it became, I went every week, and I just started getting back into comics again. We had all the stuff with Spider-Man and the Craven's Last Hunt. And there was a Hobgoblin storyline was in there, and different things going on in Spider-Man. And then, of course, McFarlane came along and so there was a lot of stuff that's just Spider-Man. We had the excitement of the black and white indie boom of the late 80s, with the Ninja Turtles, the Tick, and all those other things. So I have really fond memories of the 80s comics, because I was aspiring to get into film, and instead of having a realistic outlook for it, I had, of course, the young, naive fantasy outlook of, oh, this is great, I'm going to be the next Spielberg. And everything was so exciting. And the comics, when I started reading at that period of time, it was exciting. And I have that feeling every time I see these 80s comics, kind of takes me back to that refound excitement of creativity that was going on. Yeah, so Dave didn't do the inside of this. He just did the cover, but they made a poster out of that and everything else. Is a great cover. And here's one you probably are unaware of. This is another Dave Stevens one. Mr. Monster #2 by Dave Stevens. I love this book. It was a lot of fun. This was a Golden Age character that fell into public domain, and Eric T. Gilbert grabbed it and started doing regular books. And I enjoyed the artwork, and I enjoyed the kind of the humorous. It wasn't like laugh out loud funny, but it was kind of irreverent, which is kind of humor I like. And this book got hot, not this particular book, but the first issue did, because I believe this was Eclipse, right? So Eclipse had a flooding problem, some pipes broke or something, and they had stored all these books in the basement, all their inventory in this basement, and they got ruined. So like Mr. Monster #1, almost all the copies that didn't get out through comic shops that were stored as inventory got all wiped out by this flood in their basement. And so it suddenly became a collector's item, because there was if you didn't buy it when it first came out, you weren't getting a copy because they weren't available. So what did I say? Eric T. Gilbert. I'm sorry, I meant Michael T. Gilbert. Marcus Killigrew is correct. It's Michael T. Gilbert. My apologies. So this was a fun book, and it was hot there for a while. Not so much anymore, but And one thing you got to say about Todd McFarlane is, whether you like his artwork or don't like his artwork, it was interesting and it was dynamic. And I remember seeing this. How could you not see this cover and go, okay, that's cool? Because I don't think anybody at this time had done the cape like this. It's just ridiculous, and yet it's so cool. And I think Art of Roy mentioned earlier, when I showed my artwork from Wraith of God 3, page 6, that I did a McFarlane cape. And he's right. I mean, this is nonsensical. This doesn't make any sense, and yet it's so cool looking. And I think that's why Todd and other guys like him were so successful, is because they didn't let normal convention, control their artwork. They were just tuned in, young guys that were tuned into the culture and what was cool. And they didn't care about the physics or the reality of it. They just said, man, if his cape was a mile long, look how cool that would be, if just as a design element sweeping around the city, or in this case, encompassing this woman that he's holding close. That's a pretty memorable cover right there. Speaking of, which I was a little bit earlier, the Hobgoblin. How about this classic? This is J.R. Jr., I think, isn't it? Is that Milgram or is that J.R. Jr.? Marcus Killigrew would know. I'm looking for a name. Oh, it's JR Jr., inked by JR Sr. How about that? Yeah, so this is back when JR Jr. was a more conventional artist. Before he sort of changed his style and he got, super popular. Good artist, good solid artist, but just kind of looked like, Marvel House style. But then he kind of got that Frank Miller influence and then kind of went that different direction and got everybody's attention. And now he's a legend. Now this is still highly collectible. This used to have, or this came with a tattoo, one of those little cards you would get, it would have an image on it, you get it wet and you'd stick it on your skin and hold it down for a couple of minutes and peel it off and you'd have like a temporary tattoo on you. So it had one of those in the comic, and it used to be that from a collector standpoint, the ones with the tattoos still intact were worth more than the ones that weren't. But the thing is, the tattoos were not attached. So they weren't stapled in the book. So then when, whoever the Comics Code Authority, or pardon me, the Overstreet people were like, well, wait a minute. If it's not attached to the comic, then it's not really part of the comic. So therefore, it shouldn't be worth any more or any less, whether the tattoo is in there or not. And so it changed. And now you'll find it listed in the price guide that either with tattoos or without, it's the same value. So there you go. A little history of collecting. But that used to, because they were treating it like a Marvel value stamp. And if someone cut a Marvel value stamp, you're actually damaging the book. But the tattoos were, like I said, it was not attached to anything. You could just slide it right out. And so they're like, well, it's not part of the book, so therefore it shouldn't be considered, in grading or in the value of the book. So there you go. My good friend, Walter Simonson. This keeps coming up no matter whenever this is not only like one of my favorite covers from the 80s, it's one of my favorite covers of all time. Now, it's not the first time I think that the artwork encroached on the logo, but it's got to be one of the most, it's the most cleverest way to incorporate the logo into the imagery of the cover, the actual cover art. And for those of you who don't know, if you look down here, there's Walter's signature right here. Simon, that's a dinosaur. There's the head of the dinosaur, the neck, the back of the dinosaur, and then the tail. So that's why he signs his work like that. It's a little dinosaur. I think that's cool. It's one of those things you go, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. Although I don't know if I could make a little Presti a dinosaur. It makes me wonder, next time I talk to him, I'm going to ask him how long it took him to figure that out. What? That's the only book you're missing from his whole run is this one? This is the most important one. Get out there, Green Laser, and get that book. My goodness. It's one of the best story arcs in the history of comics is this Beta Ray Bill, the first, was it 5 or 6 issues, something like that of, or is it just the first 3? It might be just the first 3. But Beta Ray Bill, of course, stayed in the comic and would show up from time to time. But I think the initial story arc where you've got Beta Ray Bill captures Thor's hammer and proves to be just as as worthy to hold the hammer as Don Blake was. And now suddenly you've got a conundrum, right? So he steals Thor's hammer and becomes Thor. Well, now you've got 2 people that need a hammer. And so Odin ends up making a hammer for Beta Ray Bill and giving the Thor's hammer back to Don Blake. And so now you have 2 Thors, which is just, it's amazing how long Thor was developed in I think came out, was it 62 or 63, Journey to Mystery 83. And so, you're talking about 20 years of Thor stories before someone thought to have another character pick up the hammer and be just as worthy as Don Blake, because then you got a real problem. So just an awesome storyline and an awesome complete run. I don't think there's anybody that was meant to write Thor to the degree that Walter was. I mean, it's just, I just don't think anybody can touch what he did with Thor. Now this came out while I was at film school, and this has a little bit more value than the regular issues in the run, and there's really not much going on here. I mean, it's like, Captain America no more, right? So once again, Steve Rogers quits being Captain America for a while. And we've seen that more than once, but it's the cover by Zach that really made this kind of a collectible book. And I remember, and I've told the story before, where Stan Lee came and spoke at USC, right? And I went to that, and I remember that we were waiting to get in. I was there a little bit early, and there was a guy sitting down there by the door reading this comic, waiting to get in to see Stan Lee. I was like, wow, that's a cool cover. So I went out to Melrose, a Golden Apple, and got me a copy. The question is, do I still have it? I have to go check. I'm pretty sure I do, but again, it's not that expensive of a book, but it's a great cover. What do you mean, what, no Cap again? This is Cap. Come on, Paul. Yeah, I have. It's remarkable, that big, huge, gigantic, almost like billboard type artwork he's doing. It's just fantastic. The Thor frog story, Paul's sitting here, is fantastic as well. And so imaginative. It's like, I talked with Mike Barron a little bit earlier in the show about Star Trek 4, and hearing that, oh yeah, they go back in time to get whales. I was like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. This movie's going to suck. And it didn't. And then the same thing, you think, how goofy is it that he turns Thor into a frog? But then when you read the story, of course, Loki puts a spell on him, right? And turns him into a frog. But then he has this whole thing where he leads the frog against the alligators. It's so great. You would think this is stupid, and it's not. It's brilliant. So that's my second favorite Thor story arc, next to the Beta Ray Bill one. Great deal of respect for Walter as an artist and as a writer, and just as his comic book storyteller would probably be the best way to categorize Walter Simonson, and he's terrific at it. Jerry says, I love this Cap run leading to Super Patriot taking the Cap medal for a while. Great storytelling. Yeah, it was. Oh, were you making a joke? And that's why it says Captain America no more. So no Captain America. Oh, I get it. I get it. All right. So here we go. Moving right along. This is another obvious one. But there you go. King size issue number 300. This is a weird cover for me. I don't particularly like it. I don't hate it, but it's so freaking iconic. I had to put it on here, even though I know this is my list of favorite comics. And I did buy this when it came out, because I was reading the McFarlane, I saw the McFarlane art and I was kind of like, I thought this is terrible, but it's cool at the same time. So by the standards that I used to judge artwork at that time, it wasn't meeting those standards. And yet I found myself strangely compelled to look at it because it was interesting. And of course, now looking back on it, that's the whole object, right? Is to get people to look at your artwork and go, wow, that's unusual and interesting, and something different that we're not used to. So therefore you're compelled to pick it up and read it. So there you go. This is the Thor cover, this cover, Steranko's Hulk annual cover where he's lifting up the stone, he's getting like this, are got to be like three of the most ripped off covers or homaged covers in the history of comics. And that's saying quite a lot when you're talking about something that came out in, what was this, 88, I think? To become one of the most popularly riffed covers of all time. And it is. Who hasn't done this cover? Here's a book that sparks controversy for some reason and still does to this day. It's Batman the Killing Joke. Now, I love Boland's work. Not a big a fan as his digital stuff as I am as just when he was working traditionally here. I was blown away. Now, I had seen Boland's work in Camelot 3000, and I thought it was really good. And he wasn't even inking himself. He had other people like Bruce Patterson and other people were inking him on that series. And then you'd see some like covers and stuff that he had inked himself. But when this came out, now Paul Taylor says Graham doesn't like this. No, he doesn't, because he doesn't think it's true to Batman's character. I don't concern myself with things like that. I'm not a purist by any stretch of the imagination. I look at a story within the context of that story. And that's why I don't get mad about superhero movies not being accurate to the comic books, because I just look at it as it's a different thing. And as long as what they do in the movie makes it a good movie, then I'm fine with it. Unless, the costume's really stupid or whatever. But then that usually detracts from the movie not making it a good movie. But this book, and I've never been a Batman purist, and Graham is a Batman purist. He worked on the book for years, right? So he should know the character inside and out. I really don't, because I was never a DC guy growing up. So I knew who Batman was in the very generalist sense, but I never got into his psyche or anything like that. And I really liked this book. And again, it's brutal, but it's also, the artwork in it is just freaking unbelievable. And again, that's what sells it for me. I would never, even growing up as a little kid, would ever read a comic book that I didn't like the artwork in, no matter how well it was written, because I never got that far. If I opened it up and like, oh, this artwork sucks, I'm not going to, I shouldn't say that. If it was artwork that I didn't like, that doesn't mean it sucked. It just means I didn't like it, or didn't respond to it. Then I would not buy the comic. In fact, I was a regular comic book reader of Captain America. And when Frank Robbins took over in the middle to late 70s, I couldn't stand his work on Captain America. And I finally quit reading the book because I just couldn't take the Frank Robbins artwork. Sorry, Frank. So anyway, this book, the artwork in it is freaking fantastic. And I do think the thing that offends Graham so much at the end of this book is the joke that the Joker tells Batman, and then they both laugh, right? And I always looked at it like Batman and the Joker are about separated by about this much, right? And because they're both crazy to a certain extent, right? And so I like that idea where they're both kind of laughing, which is completely inappropriate to be laughing after what the Joker has just done to everybody. And yet I thought, and maybe Alan Moore, and I'm not a big fan of Alan Moore as a person or anything like that, but he was a pretty good comic book writer in his time. And, I don't know what his intent was, but I always took it as like, this was that moment where it showed that the Joker and Batman are very close to being the same thing. And I just thought it was interesting. And so I didn't have a problem with it. But it does kind of make Batman maybe for a moment there seem less heroic. But I just thought it was his insanity kind of creeping out a little bit on him. Jiminy Cricket says, yeah, I read The Invaders too, but I quit reading it after a couple issues because I didn't like Robin's artwork. Yeah, that's another thing. I didn't buy Dark Knight originally when it came out, and then I went back and bought it after it got expensive because everybody's telling me you got to read this, you got to read this, but I just didn't get the artwork at all. I did not understand what Frank Miller was doing, and I do have an appreciation for it now. What are you talking about? 6 fingers? Is there 6 fingers on here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there is. Well, what are you gonna do? Well, there's 5 fingers and a thumb, I guess, right? That's all I got to say about that, Eric. Anyway, there you go. So just for the artwork alone, this comic redefined the Joker. I thought the Joker was stupid until I read this comic, and then he became terrifying. And I thought, wow. So, and I do love the artwork, so that's why it's on there. I bought this in comic shop in, was it Overland or Overlook Boulevard? I can't remember, in just west of LA. What's that? Culver City, where I had an apartment with some other guys from school. And there was, if you got on, I want to say Overlook Boulevard. If you followed that, it would take you kind of the back way to the airport, and you could avoid all that highway traffic in LA, but you had all the stoplights, but that was much more desirable than getting stuck in freeway traffic. So oftentimes I would go to the airport that way, and there was a comic shop right there on the right-hand side as you're going towards the airport. And that became my regular comic shop once I moved out of downtown LA and moved to Culver City. So that's a bunch of information that I'm sure you don't care about, but I've given it to you anyway. Geeky says, I think it's Overland. I think you're right. It's Overland, Overlook, Overland. Not Sepulveda. It was it was over something. And went right underneath the 10 freeway in Culver City, right? If you wanted to go to Santa Monica, you would get on Overland and go, or yeah, I guess it was Overland. Go under the 10, go north up into Santa Monica. So, yeah. All right, here once again is another McFarland cover. This has really gotten hot in the collector's market recently. There's different guys. I watch collectors' videos and stuff to kind of keep up with what's going on in the market. And this one guy does a Captain no, it's not Captain Comics. I can't remember, but he does like his weekly top 10. And this has been in the top 10 for the last couple of weeks. Extremely popular cover. And now you could argue that it's iconic. Now, of course, everybody criticizes the reflection in the blades because that's not how reflection works. There would be 3 separate Hulks in there. There wouldn't be one reflective Hulk stretched over 3 pieces of metal. But obviously, for the effect of the cover, that's, you want to see the whole Hulk face, and it wouldn't really work putting 3 different Hulks in there. So. Paul Taylor says Hulk 181 is better. Yeah, maybe, but it's a 70s. That's a 70s book, not an 80s book. And we're in the 80s right now, Paul. So catch up to the correct decade. I've got so many copies of this. I got the black and white edition, one that's oversized. I got the one that was recolored by Boland. I doubt I'll get the oversized one. I have seen the original pages. Some guy was selling them. I couldn't afford them, but I have seen the originals before, and it's remarkable because I thought he must be a pen inker and he was a brush inker. All that intricate line work like Gary Martin does is brush. And it's just, that to me is like next level of respect. Evil One says the cool thing about this book is that it was a gory battle. It was a gory battle. What was the dang it? It was a mini series. It was Hulk fighting Wolverine, and it was drawn by Lionel Francis Yu, and it was written by the clown who wrote. I'm sorry, that wasn't very nice. The guy who wrote Lost, Damon Lindelof or whatever. But the Hulk rips Wolverine in half in this double-page spread. He just rips him in half. That's about the grossest thing I've ever seen in a comic book. But anyway, this, it's now become iconic. It's crazy to think that, but it is true. Now, I often say that Gil Kane was the best comic book cover artist of the 70s. Well, in my opinion, Mike Zeck was the best cover artist of the 80s. And there's a ton you could pick from. But let's start with this one. This by J.M. DeMatteis and Mike Zeck, The Craven's Last Hunt. Are you kidding me? What a great story. But this is a great cover. And I would say that all the covers in this series were great. But this series got me back into reading Spider-Man full time. Because I was just like, I saw this, I saw the cover art, and I was like, again, the artwork sold it for me. And it was like I could not walk away from it. You had this sense that this book was going to be a big deal. And it was, but again, it didn't explode to a point where you can't afford it in terms of a collectible, but it is worth more than the average Spider-Man comic of that period of time. But it's just a great story, and it's really heavy. It's heavy reading and not something you'd necessarily expect from a comic book. Although we were getting into that period of time because of Miller's Dark Knight and then Watchmen, where you're getting more grim, mature storylines in the comics. Which I don't know. It's kind of that's a positive and a negative, because I think it's gone too far. But at the time, it was refreshing because we'd had basically decades of kids comics, and that we're maturing a little bit, but we're still safe within that comics code authority. And then these stories started pushing it a little bit, recognizing that they had more adult readership at that time, and it started pushing these things into more dramatic themes. And this was a pretty grim story, but it was really cool. Yeah, he buried him alive, and you're just like, what? Which is even maybe creepier than actually getting killed by him. Can you imagine being buried alive? I want to, I just had it, and what do I do with it? My desktop is obliterated. It's got so much crap on it. I just moved something over there, and I can't find it. I'll do it again. Okay, there we go. Now I won't lose it. Okay, just a couple more. Speaking of Frank Miller, simple, incredibly simple, and yet instantly iconic. I think that's what we're all going for, right? Is you want to create artwork that is instantly memorable. It becomes an instant classic. Now, if this book had sucked, then maybe we wouldn't remember it. I don't know, but it's brilliant in its simplicity and its design. You can always argue how good of an artist Frank Miller actually is, but again, it depends on your standards and what you're looking for. And he was certainly innovative. Some of his storytelling in Daredevil is incredible. I look at him kind of like I look at Simonson. He's more of a storyteller. It was always that combination of story and art with Miller. It was never just Frank Miller, the artist, or Frank Miller, the writer. It was Frank Miller, the storyteller. And when you combine both elements of his at its best, which is basically Daredevil in this, and you could argue Sin City, that he's, he becomes one of the absolute legends of comic books. And if he had only been a artist, maybe not. If he'd only be, probably not. Oh, definitely not. If he had only been a writer, he'd probably get some renown, obviously. But it's that writer-artist combination. Very stylized art. Again, like Simonson, very stylized art, but great storyteller. And, this is funny, Eric, because I had people, telling me that you got to read this. And I was like, I can't get past the artwork. And they said, you will understand the artwork style choice when you read it. The art will make sense. And I didn't really understand that. And I still don't really understand it from a logical. I couldn't explain it, but it does fit, right? His rough style fit the story he was telling. And again, it was the combination of it wasn't just the artwork, it wasn't just the story, it was the combination of both those things that created a classic comic. So that cover gets on here. The one more that I almost forgot when I was talking about Zach, and I was like, I can't forget it because it might be one of my favorite covers all time, along with a lot of other people. This is Captain America Annual number 8. Zach recreated this so many times as a commission that he finally said he wasn't doing it anymore because he's got sick of doing it. And it's such a great image. There's so much power and dynamics in this. And he successfully, it's Captain America's Annual, so you got to see Cap clearly, but Wolverine is guest starring. And so it's like, and Wolverine, of course, is the hottest character in the world at the time. And I don't know, probably still is, but at this time was hot. And so you had to come up with an image that didn't compromise Wolverine while not compromising the star of the book, which of course is Captain America. And Mike pulled it off, man. And it's very simple, but again, strong, centralized figures, dynamic, ton of energy in it. I can't imagine at any age seeing this on the newsstand and not picking it up. I was not someone who bought annuals, generally speaking, because I was always a collector as well as a reader. The two never separated for me. It was all, even when I was a kid. Condition, I always tried to keep everything in really nice condition because I understood the collector value in it. But at this point, I was an adult. I was 21, 22, 23, something like that when this came out. And so I was like, I would never pick up annuals because traditionally they're never worth anything. There's some Silver Age annuals, some old FF annuals and Spider-Man annuals that are worth something. But for the most part, annuals were not, you'd get one that maybe Arthur Adams drew, so you'd pick that up, or Michael Golden drew and you'd pick that up. But this was, I had to have this book. When I saw that cover, I was like, this is freaking awesome. And, the fact that it's so ripped off, and even Mike himself having to recreate it so many times because it's so stinking popular. It's right up there with, Thor number 4, the Buscema cover with Silver Surfer and Thor. Buscema recreated that a million times for commissions as well. It's just one of those kind of, again, instantly iconic covers. And Paul's right. And that's one of the reasons why the annuals never were that popular with collectors, is because they usually weren't part of continuity. They were just kind of like solo stories. And all of us comic book readers, we're all like this. We demand continuity. We want stuff to tie together. We feel like we're reading something that's part of a bigger universe. Now, the older I get, the less I'm like that. I just like Killing Joke. I mean, if it's a good story with good art, then that's fine with me, but back when I was a kid or a younger reader, if it wasn't part of continuity, you're kind of like, well, what's the point? If it doesn't really affect anything else I'm reading, why should I read it? So it's very rare that you picked up something. Mignola's Gotham by Gaslight. That was a novelty Batman story that, was that Ostrander, that John Ostrander wrote that, I think. But, oh, no, Brian Augustine wrote it. I'm sorry. And that was really good as a standalone type thing. But that had more of a novelty thing to it, And so, yeah, I wasn't big on annuals because stuff would happen in the annual and it would never affect anything else. So it's like, it seemed pointless within my other reading. So, but anyway, there you go. Those are my top comics of the 80s. Comic covers, I should say, of the 80s. Boy, we've gone 2.5 hours. This is epic. But we're not done yet, folks, because this is the last show of the year. What does that really mean? I don't know, man. When you shake it all out, probably not much. We've all been through the new year. Me, 60 times. So we're giant size the same as annuals, yes. But I will say this. Giant Size Avengers #2, you had Death of the Swordsman. So that was that was continuity based. That was important. And Giant Size Man-Thing with the Howard the Duck backup stories. That's why you bought those. You didn't care about the Man-Thing stuff, but they had Frank Gerber and Frank Bruner, Howard the Duck backup stories in Giant Size Man-Thing 4 and 5. Must reads. One of them, he fights a vampire cow, and that is like freaking the best Howard the Duck story ever. Yeah, exactly. And Elseworlds titles were never must reads. They were more like you kind of would pick and choose and go, oh, that's an interesting concept. I'll read that kind of thing. But annuals weren't like that. Annuals would just take Spider-Man and he would fight somebody. And it didn't really ever amount to anything in the rest of the comics. But there was Giant Size Spider-Man #1. He fought Dracula, which that in itself is interesting enough to buy, I suppose. So I got that. And then he fought Shang-Chi in the second one, which I also got. And there was a couple Punisher issues in there that just from a collector standpoint, you knew would probably be worth money at some point. So I got those. But like some of the other ones, I mean, I didn't really appeal to me. Again, if I saw an annual with really cool artwork, I'd get it. So none that I'm aware of. I laughed a little bit when Mike said that he started off writing Atari Force. I almost was going to take that and run with it, but I decided, no, I better not. Eric Boyd says the Bigfoot annual worth the price of a potato cam. Well, speaking of Bigfoot, we've got to take one last chance before the end of the year to see if we can find Bigfoot. Now, my prediction is we won't find Bigfoot. Let's take a moment here before we do this to have another dark chocolate cherry. I'd only buy these because they're healthy. Dark chocolate's good for you. Next time I go in there to Trader Joe's, that's where I got these. They had dark chocolate, almond, coconut. It's like a mini Mounds bar, or an Almond Joy, excuse me. Never liked those when I was a kid, but man, I love them now. It must be an old guy thing. Okay. These are not good. I'm telling you up front. The well is running dry. I'm going to start doing like UFOs and stuff too, because there's not a lot of Bigfoot material out there. But this is a tragic story that I think is really important to learn from. And so let's start with this. I'm actually going to play the audio on this because it's and I'll comment after. Go ahead and watch this.
Welcome back. New at 5:30, 2 Portland men are dead after searching for Sasquatch in eastern Skamania County. According to the Skamania County Communications Center, they received a report from a family member that 2 people were overdue home after they went out searching for Bigfoot.
Excuse me. I didn't mean to laugh because it's not funny. These guys are dead in the Portland area. Why would you risk your life looking for something that doesn't exist? This is a tragic story of just foolishness. And these guys died, and that's a tragic thing. And I don't want to make light of it, but holy crap. 2 guys died exposed, and they were older too. Like one of them was 50 something. And it was like, what are you guys thinking? Oh my gosh. Paul Taylor says it's on your death certificate, cause of death, searching for Bigfoot. I mean, gee, many Christmas. Eric Boyce says, oh my, she can broadcast my news any day. They were looking for Bigfoot, Violent Comics. Okay, Marcus, since when do I believe the government, anything the government says? The fact that the government is now admitting that UFOs are real, that tells me that they're not. Anyway, so I was just struck. Evil One saying too soon, Aaron. Yeah, I know, but that it's like if you're deer hunting or whatever, and it's like, bad things, but you're out searching for Bigfoot and you die searching for Bigfoot. That is tragic. Okay. Well, now this, I suddenly feel guilty for bringing that up, but hey, it was a story on the news. I got to react to it. Yeah, I don't know how Ethan does trash cast. I would instantly feel guilty 5 seconds after I opened my mouth. And now I suddenly feel guilty, but okay. This is allegedly, Marcus, this is from the government that just declared that UFOs are real. The government, wait a minute, declaring that UFOs are real doesn't mean that they're declaring that aliens are in those UFOs. So let's clarify that. This is allegedly government released film from a government guarded sanctuary where Bigfoots live, apparently. So now this is government footage because the government will only provide the blurriest videos possible. We have a family of Bigfoots. There's Dad. Those are his knees right there. And there he is, his head. Now here's the family. There's Dad. There's Bigfoot Jr., Mom Bigfoot, walking through the woods as the government agency. I didn't know there was a Bigfoot agency, but perhaps there is. This is leaked footage of them, keeping an eye on the Bigfoot family that is roaming around in this secluded and blocked off area because they don't want us to know the truth. Because if we discovered there was actually Bigfoot out there, we would probably do nothing. So I'm not sure why they're guarding this as a secret, but indeed they are. And here's the leaked footage to prove it. That's right. I don't know what that stands for, but that's the government agency Bigfoot. Hey, my Super 8 films were better focused than this. Duckbeck, and I'm confused on how someone can die from looking for something. Well, they were not apparently dressed accordingly. They got lost in the woods, and the elements got them. Like died of hypothermia or whatever. As you can see, there was snow on the ground. They were up wherever they were at. It was cold. I'm always fascinated by people that go off into the woods and get lost and die. And it's kind of like, aren't you supposed to mark your trail if you're an experienced woodsman person? Know where you're going and how to get out of there. I mean, I can't see myself wandering around the woods to a point where I would get lost and, I just wouldn't do it. But I'm not, I'm not like an adventurous kind of person in that sense. So, or Bigfoot killed them and the government is covering it up. Indeed. I agree. It does sound like an M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie plot, and emphasis on the ding dong. That's what I always call him. Is that where you getting that from me, or did you come up with that too? But I always call him Shyamalan Ding Dong. I remember him. I was reading this article on him, and after The Sixth Sense came out, and it was this incredible success. And he said that Spielberg called him, and he recounted this phone conversation with Spielberg, saying that it was so great because I finally felt like I was talking to someone that was on my level. The amount of arrogance you have to say something like that and it came back to bite him because every film he made since then got progressively worse. And so he was a bit of, what happens is if you're so completely arrogant and self-assured, you will do everything or you'll do anything. And all you have around you is yes men, and no one will dare tell you that it sucks. And then so you end up just destroying your own career, which he's done a good job of, although he's trying to resurrect it with, some other stuff. But he certainly killed his any momentum he had with his first couple movies. All right, so that was government footage leaked of Bigfoot. So you can take that for what it's worth. Okay, so here's a little Bigfoot action, and when I say action, I mean non-action. Is this Bigfoot? Is this just like a shape of maybe a tent or something? It doesn't move, and so that's always the danger that this is not what it appears to be. But here we go. This thing right there. You see it right there. What is that? Now, it appears like maybe it moves, or is that an optical illusion from the trees? Like it looks like right there a hand goes up or something, but I wonder if that's just an optical illusion because you see it right here. Yeah, it is, because you can see it right there moving on that tree. It's like he moves and then the trees are together, but then they separate because as you move the camera, and it created that movement like there was an arm being lifted. But that I mean, I don't even know what we're looking at. Giant Brown Bear says Violent Comics. That's a Woden shot. Okay. Creative Faces is a cutout, which that's what it kind of looks like. It's like a cardboard cutout that they set up there and then filmed. I'll take a look at it again here and see if it gets any better. There's just, yeah, I mean, it's Evil One says, no, that's a tree person, a Trent. Ronan says it's waving. That's what I thought at first. They lifted his arm, but that's not what it is. It's the two trees. As the camera moves, it's creating an optical illusion that they're like there's movement there, but it isn't. It's just like you can see it on the right-hand side of the cardboard cutout, excuse me, where there's movement like an elevator kind of thing going up, and that's just an optical illusion of the trees crossing in front of one another and the camera movement. So I'm gonna classify this one as BS, baby. Jerry Roscoe says that is Shane Davis hiding from John Malin after the great train trolling of 2024. It could be. Wasp's nest. That's a pretty big wasp nest. Yeah. I don't think anybody in the audience is sold on that one. All right, here we go. Here we have this is kind of a floating Bigfoot head. You guys tell me. Now they've done us the privilege of circling the head so you can actually see it, but there we go. I mean, it's, you know what I think? I think that's a Bigfoot mask someone put on a tree stump because they're not even getting any indication of any of the rest of his body anyplace. It's just that head sitting there. There's a dog. See, if you can take a photo of a dog like that and where it's running towards camera and you go, oh, that's clearly a dog. But you can't do that with your Bigfoot video. All right, there we go. That's as close as we're going to get. So here's a tree stump here. Wouldn't we be, he's just sticking his head out. It could be like, you look at a cloud and you see a face or whatever. I assume that's possibly what we could be looking at here. This could be another tree stump with just the right amount of notches and shadow in the right places that it kind of looks like a face. Duck Bacon wants to know if is he pooping? Head on a spike. That's what I'm thinking. Evil One says, maybe we can't ever find Bigfoot because he's been decapitated. There's some reality there. That's true. Shelly is sneaking around in the background. Say hi to the gang, Shelly.
Y'all, just getting batteries.
We have a little pantry closet over there that has like tech stuff in it, and Shelly is in there stealing batteries. I shouldn't say stealing because she probably bought them. So
that's for sure.
So she's collecting them. But Duck Bacon says, hail Shelly. Dale A. Past Master Dan.
Hi, brother.
Creative Faye.
Aww.
Andy Dalliff.
All of our favorites.
Mm-hmm. Evil One says, love you, Shelly, with a heart.
Oh, I love you guys. Couldn't do it without you.
Marcus Killigrew says, hey. Everybody's saying hey.
I saw a video. Marcus, what was it? You were on? I think Duck Bacon. He said his icon, but I saw Marcus for the first time. Mr. Handsome.
Well, look at that, Marcus.
So there you have it.
Eric Boyd says, hey.
Hey. I come over there, but I haven't even brushed my hair today.
Pantheon. Eric Boyd all saying hello.
Mm-hmm.
So there you
guys.
go. There we go. Simply Green says, Bigfoot, Yeti, and other large humanoids transcended and are multi-dimensional beings. We can't track them when they jump dimensions. We have discussed that possibility on this show multiple times, that the Bigfoot is actually interdimensional, which is why he's always fuzzy in photographs, because he's always phasing in and out of dimensions. So no offense, Simply Green, I don't buy it, but that is a plausible, no, it's not plausible, a possible explanation for what we're seeing. Paul Taylor says, I haven't brushed my hair either. Duck Bacon, yay, Shelly watches our show. There you go. Shelly's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. She is like Bigfoot, phasing in and out. So, and she has phased out of the room, but thank you guys all for the greetings to her. Simply Green says, improbably, to be honest. Yeah. But we do know that searching for Bigfoot can be a dangerous occupation. So please be careful when you're out there. Trying to find something that doesn't exist takes a long time. and especially when the weather is not good. So that's my public service announcement for today. Creative Faye says Aaron always brushes his hair. And Creative Faye, I would just say catch this. There we go. Last cannonball of the year, perhaps. So there won't be any graybeards this week because once again, I got I'm not gonna say I took a raft of crap, but a little bit of negative commentary, shall we say, about not doing graybeards. But I mean, you can't do graybeards on Christmas Day, and I can't do it on New Year's Day, and that's just when it fell on the calendar. But we will be back the following week, which would be next week, and should be regular schedule. Professionals should return. Graybirds will be back. So at least I've been doing the Sunday show. It's fallen around the holidays, so I've been able to do the Sunday show without any interruption. So Evil One, $2. I'm still convinced Bigfoot lives in a UFO. That might explain a lot. That's more of the $6 million man theory of Bigfoot being an alien robot, which, it's possible. It's as possible as anything else at this point. Dale A says, I'll have a graybeard by the time the show comes back. Come on, 2 weeks isn't that long. You got to admit, we went out with a bang. We had the 100th episode, multiple guest stars. I got Dale Keown to draw on stream. When has that ever happened? So, of course, Ethan was there. John was there. Shane was afraid and did not come on. And of course, Dale. And who else did I have on? I had, Andy Smith was on, and then plus the regular crew. So it was quite a 100th episode. And so we will be back next week on Graybeard. So don't you fret. Wow. Whoa. Hello. I'll have you know that Nebraska played in a bowl game yesterday and won. Thank you very much. So you just wait till next year. Creative Phase, we just missed you guys. I appreciate that very much. Let me, if I can, just here before I get off into Wild Blue Yonder. Remember, Wraith of God 3 Fear Hollow is active. It's in demand on Indiegogo right now. The Wraith and Esther go after the Headless Horseman in this particular graphic novel. You got 4 cover options: A, B, the C cover variant, C, the Marvel 1972 variant, and D, of course, the great painted cover by Chris Stevens. So you have plenty of options here. I won't go through the whole thing again, but a lot of good stuff on here. If you have not checked out the campaign, please do. We'll be open here for a while yet, as I'm working on the book even as we speak. But we're a long way from where we want to be. So spread the word, and we'll hope that Trump improves the economy quickly, and we can get some more confident buyers out there for the book. And again, if you weren't here early, I did preview. This is page 6 from Wraith of God with the, of course, aforementioned Todd McFarlane cape. And there's Esther. So good times. You don't want to miss it. You can also check out Mike Barron's Sherlock Holmes Leviathan. You'll find 2 links to 2 different campaign sites for that. And also my website, where if you missed Kit Carter or you missed some back issues of Wraith of God and want to get caught up, they're right there. You can order them, ships out the next day. So you'll find all of those links in the description of this video. I want to thank everybody for joining me. I want to thank everybody for the super chats and the commentary and the participation in the chat. We couldn't do the show, of course, without you guys, and we greatly appreciate it. I want everybody to have a happy and safe New Year. And we'll be right back here on Sunday with another Aaron Live. And then the following week, we'll be back to Graybeards and Professionals. And you'll be seeing me so much, you'll be sick of me. So anyway, thank you guys. Take care, be safe, and we will see you next time right here on Aaron Live. And special thanks to Mike Barron for coming on. That was great. Good night, everybody, and thank you.